was on his terms and when he wanted to do it. I'm aware that there is, testimony in this case that, Mr. Depp decided to leave because he didn't want to be violent. And I do think that's true sometimes. I think he did leave in times where he didn't want an altercation. He did leave after an altercation. He did leave and then came back and continued the altercation. So leaving wasn't the defining variable. The problem was that, with this obsessiveness and this perseveration that he had, the fight would always come back. So leaving might end the argument for that moment, but Ms. Heard knew he was always going to come back and he was going to, start the interrogation once again.
And what is the effect of the coercive control on Amber Heard?
I mean, the effect was drastic. She talked to me that she, her roles consistently dropped over the time that she was in the relationship with Mr. Depp, just because it was so difficult to go on auditions, to want to be in a different location with him. Whenever she was not on location with him, it was very stressful. It was very anxiety-provoking because of the accusations of infidelity. We heard that through Isaac Baruch's testimony when she called and was saying, babe, there's no one here. There's no one here. That was something that she had to do repeatedly and constantly over the course of the relationship. So it caused a significant amount of anxiety, of distress, of having to try to conceal and maneuver around him to try to have the career that she wanted to have. It made her hypervigilant and definitely contributed to sort of her psychological symptomatology getting worse over time.
What about sexual violence?
So there was a number of incidents of sexual violence reported in this relationship. Those are documented early on in Dr. Bonnie Jacobs' notes, where when Mr. Depp was drunk or high, he threw her on the bed, ripped off her nightgown, and tried to have sex with her. There were times when he forced her to give him oral sex when he was angry. These weren't in loving moments. These were angry moments, moments of dominance, moments of him trying to get control over her. There was a time when they were in Hicksville in the trailer, I don't want to say trailer park, but I guess it's trailer park. It is a trailer park, where he was accusing her of a woman hitting on Amber, and that was the problem. Amber got accused of women hitting on her, and it got accused of men hitting on her. So there were so many targets that came through in his obsessive jealousy. But when he, on that incident when Kelly Sue was accused of hitting on Miss Heard, and they went back into the trailer, Mr. Depp performed a cavity search and ostensibly was looking for drugs and felt it acceptable to rip off her nightgown and stick his fingers up her vagina to look for cocaine, thought that maybe she was hiding them there. And again, these incidents often happen in a drug-fueled rage. There was another incident in the Bahamas where when he got angry, he took his fingers and he put them in her vagina and moved her around violently in the closet. Again, an act of sexual violence. And of course, the incident in Australia was one of the most severe instances of sexual violence that Miss Heard had to endure, in which when he was beating her and choking her and telling her, I'm going to fucking kill you, I hate you, I'm going to fucking kill you, and he grabbed a bottle that was on the bar and penetrated her with that bottle. And Miss Heard
If you're thinking about buying solar panels, don't. The U.S. government will literally buy them for you if you take 6
attention to those stereotypes during the course of your testimony, correct?
What I was saying was you have to pay attention to gendered stereotypes when you're conducting these evaluations. You can't assume all the time that the male is the perpetrator and the female is the victim. You have to go into the evaluation understanding that the male also could be the victim of intimate partner violence.
In fact, you're aware that there are large-scale studies that do say that IPV towards males does exist.
Of course.
Okay, to those stereotypes, and every time you referred to the characteristic of a victim of intimate partner violence yesterday, you used the pronouns she or her, didn't you?
I was using the she and her pronouns in this case because my determination was, as I stated, that Ms. Heard was the victim of intimate partner violence. That is why I was using the she, her pronoun.
You, in fact, said women gets into the relationship for all the right reasons. That's what you said. The woman gets into the relationship for all the right reasons. And then you say difficult for victim to extricate herself. Go on to say that she can and she should. Over and over, you use she, right?
I believe in this case I did because I was referencing this case where I found Ms. Heard to be the victim of intimate partner violence. It doesn't mean that men don't get into the relationships for all the right reasons too. I believe they do.
Nearly every time you reference the perpetrator of IPV, you use he or him, didn't you?
And it goes back to the same reasoning as I'm describing my understanding and my evaluation in this matter. Of course, men can be perpetrators and victims of intimate partner violence. That's well established in the research, and that's well established in my clinical practice as well.
Isn't the reason that you used the pronouns that you did that you almost always testify on behalf of a woman?
That's not correct.
You don't even remember the last time you testified on behalf of a man.
Well, I don't testify on behalf of someone. I testify as to the results of my evaluation. I frequently treat and assess male victims of childhood sexual abuse who are coming into treatment for abuse by their Boy Scout leader, by their coach, by their teacher, by a trusted adult. I see them in therapy. I see them in forensic matters, in criminal cases. So I treat and evaluate men all the time.
I didn't ask you about treatment. I asked you about testimony. You broke out your practice between treatment and testimony. I'm not asking about treatment. When's the last time you testified on behalf of a man?
I testified recently in a deposition on behalf of a man who was traumatized because he was wrongly convicted.
At the time of your deposition 6 weeks ago, you couldn't remember a single time you testified on behalf of a man.
I testified in my deposition that I testified in a case of a man who was wrongly convicted about 20 years and suffered physical and sexual violence in prison, and I detailed the traumatic effects of that happened on that gentleman.
All right, why don't we take a look at your deposition?
Sure.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Transcript of the deposition that you gave March 28th, 2022, correct?
Yes.
All right. Let's go to page 77. Let's look at page 78, line 8. So you can't recall a single instance where you were hired by the attorney representing the male in an IPV matter, correct?
In an IPV matter, not in a trauma matter or a child sexual abuse matter.
Okay, so that's the distinction. You don't have any recollection of ever testifying on behalf of a male in an IPV matter.
As I stated yesterday, the very first case that I testified in was in a same-sex intimate partner violence where the man was the victim of another man. I routinely treat and assess same-sex couples where then the female can be the perpetrator of another female, and the male can be the perpetrator or a victim of his partner.
So let me get this. You testified in a case where one male is alleged to have engaged in IPV against another male.
Correct.
All right. Okay. But that's the only one you remember.
No, I've done this frequently. As you well know, most cases don't go to trial. I've worked on hundreds and hundreds of cases. You've limited to testimony. Many cases don't come to trial, but I've issued reports and worked on many cases of same-sex intimate partner violence where men are the victims.
But I did ask you about testimony, and I limited the question to testimony, and the only testimony that you remember is the same-sex couple, right?
There were multiple same-sex couples, I believe, that I testified
That you testified in court at trial.
I believe so, yes.
All right, but you didn't remember that in March.
I did remember that in March.
Okay. You're a professional witness, correct?
That's not correct.
No? You make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year testifying in court, correct?
Not testifying in court, I conduct thorough, comprehensive psychological evaluations of individuals who are involved in a court case. The majority of those cases never show up in a courtroom. And half of my practice and half of my income is about my clinical work with people who are coming to me for therapy.
I didn't ask you about the other half of your income. I'm asking you whether you made hundreds of thousands of dollars a year testifying as an expert witness in court.
As you're phrasing that question, that's not correct. That would be the amount of income that I generate from my forensic practice. I testify perhaps maybe once or twice a year. Most of the work is done behind the scenes in evaluating individuals and issuing reports.
But you'll agree with me that a big part of that practice is providing expert witness testimony.
That's not correct.
No? That's not a big part of your practice.
If I testify twice a year, that's not a big part of my practice. All the other time is doing the work for the cases and evaluating the individuals and issuing reports.
All right. What percentage of work do you devote to forensic psychology?
As I stated yesterday, I say half and half clinical, half forensic, but I also have a substantial amount of time that I use in the professional activities and serving on a professional board.
So what portion of your practice do you provide expert witness services?
I think you're using the expert witness services synonymous with the forensic psychology part of the practice. So the forensic psychology practice, what I do here today is one part of it, and it's a smaller part as opposed to all of the evaluations and individuals that I'm assessing.
Your practice is successful enough that you maintain your offices on Madison Avenue in New York, correctly?
Correct. I've had that office since 2005.
Right. And you're sufficiently successful at your forensic work that you're able to perform unpaid work at a hospital, correct?
Correct, and I also do pro bono work as well.
There. In fact, you actually instruct others on the use of expert testimony in court cases, correct?
On the use and understanding trauma and violence abuse in the courtroom and how to, for advocates and people who could not have this level of training or experience, how to come into the courtroom and talk about very difficult issues of domestic
violence. You're able
violence.
to perform
Yes.
unpaid. All right. Can we pull up PX 1241? You recognize that document?
Yes, it looks like the front page of a PowerPoint presentation
And it's a PowerPoint presentation given by whom?
by myself and Mary Ann Dutton, who is a very well-known and respected researcher and clinician in the area of domestic violence.
And what's the topic of the PowerPoint that you're giving?
Expert witness testimony in cases involving domestic violence.
And who did you give this presentation to?
That was to the National Clearinghouse for the Defense of Battered Women. That is an organization that provides legal services to women who have assaulted or killed their partners in self-defense, and mostly people who these individuals, the women who they've seen in treatment, are through shelter-based programs or through advocates, and those are individuals who don't really know how to come into the courtroom and talk, and that's what this presentation and training was for.
I'm going to move PX 1241 into evidence.
Any objection? All right, 1241 in evidence. You want it published or?
Yes, let's
Find a man who wears underwear that makes his huevos rancheros feel good 24/7.
Take a trip beyond your backyard. Compare your way there. Find the smartest credit cards for you on NerdWallet.
All right. Why don't we pull up PX 1242? You recognize this document?
Yes, this also looks like a PowerPoint presentation that I gave.
All right. And what is the name of this PowerPoint presentation?
This is called The Use of Psychological Experts in Cases of Domestic Violence. It was presented to the Kings County Bar Association, which is in Brooklyn. And what this presentation talked about was some of the things that I talked to you all about yesterday, the myths and misconceptions in intimate partner violence, when women use force, what happens if they drop protective orders, how they present in court. And that's what this presentation was to attorneys at the Bar Association.
Okay. But this is another presentation that you gave as to the use of psychological experts, and you gave it to a bar association.
Right. They were prosecutors and defense attorneys in attendance at that bar
Right.
association.
At your deposition, you testified that you were going to be paid $100 an hour for your time in this case.
I did not testify to that.
You did not?
That's an error in the transcript.
Oh, that's not right.
That's correct.
So, and you corrected the transcript?
We did not do an errata in the transcript at this point.
So you knew there was an error in the transcript, but you didn't fix it?
There were several errors in the transcript.
But you didn't fix any of them?
There was no time to fix them. That's correct.
All right. So you're not being paid $100 an hour. How much are you getting?
I'm being paid $500 an hour.
$500 an hour. And that's what, and that's the bill you sent for your deposition, right? $500 an hour.
Correct.
Table. I don't. There were so
You
many that I
submitted a
wondered how I
number
didn't see it before,
of,
even though I had.
disclosures in this case.
So I was worried he would die, and I was worried.
You have not
that
formed
we
an
couldn't
opinion
come back from what happened.
as to whether Mr. Depp committed
was worried
intimate partner violence
There
against
was
Ms.
just no way
Heard.
to
Correct?
turn this around.
Correct. I
and
formed
going
the-
back, but shock. Shock.
So you flew out of that airport. Did you have a stop anywhere before you went back to LA?
Objection and relevance?
In a minute, I'll show you.
Overruled. Yes, we did. We stopped in an airport. I think it was, we stopped at the Sydney airport from Brisbane, I believe.
And did you have to change gates there?
Yes, we had a short flight to get to Sydney, and then in Sydney, I walked with Ben through the airport to get the next plane, and we passed a newsstand, and I just remember I passed this newsstand, and there was a book on one of the book stands outside of the store, and it had this puzzle piece on it, and Johnny and I used to use that as a term of endearment, puzzle piece, And I saw this puzzle piece on the cover of the book. It got my attention. It said 4 ways to click, a relationship guide. So I bought it. And I...
Who was the author?
Dr. Amy Banks.
Okay. Go ahead, please continue.
So the book, at least from the subtitle, said it was a book on solving relationship problems. So I bought it and I read it on the way home.
And why did you buy it and read it on the way home?
Because I loved this man. I loved this man so much. And it was so toxic. And for some reason, I couldn't get him to... not hurt me. I could... And it seemed like I was hurting him. We loved each other so much. At least I loved him so much. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do with this relationship. It was awful and toxic, but it was so important to me, and I loved him so much. I would have read 1,000,000 books.
So when you got back to LA, how long before Mr. Depp came back?
A few days. Johnny came back within a few days. He went to his Sweetser house, the main house, which was what we did. You know, if there was a problem between Johnny and I, we weren't under the same roof once, you know, the fight had either paused or ended, depending. But he would go to Sweetser, and I would stay at the ECB. And so he went to Sweetser upon landing, and there was some conversations with the medical team, you know, doctors and stuff, and I just remember feeling concerned for his life because things had changed, and without saying what they said to me,
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
She said without saying.
She's characterizing it.
Well, I'll overrule for now. We'll see where we go.
I became really, really worried that Johnny was not going to live through this, that there would be infections or problems and things, and he wouldn't stop using Coke, and he couldn't get the surgery he needed because he wouldn't stop using Coke, and they wouldn't put him under because of all the Coke. So,
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
All right, I'll sustain as to the last part.
Okay.
All right, next question.
So when did you next when did you next see Mr. Depp after you got back from Australia?
I saw him a few days, I don't know how long it was, but it was at the doctor. I think my best recollection is it was in the doctor's office or around that he needed a procedure.
Did there come a time that you reconciled after Australia?
Yes, because it almost felt like it went away so quickly because there was this surgery that he needed, and there was maybe he had more than one surgery, but it was, you know, like it became very, very about getting Johnny through the next step. You know, getting Johnny home, getting Johnny off the Coke long enough to get the procedure done, and then after that procedure, getting another procedure done. And it was just these small steps, and before you know it, we were kind of back in it. With the prospect, of course, of him being done with all the drugs and drinking, because that's what necessarily had to happen for him to have this surgery. So that made me feel a little, you know, a little bit more secure and kind of coming back into this relationship with him.
Okay. So I'm going to take you to March 23, 2015. which is a few weeks after, 2.5 weeks roughly after Australia. Where was Johnny staying at this point?
I think he was staying at the Eastern Columbia, or at the ECB. Yeah, he was staying at the ECB at the time because we were kind of in the bedroom together the night of the 22nd, which is when he passed out, how I found his iPad.
I'm sorry, when you...
I found his iPad open. He was texting someone with it open. He passed out, and I saw what he was texting.
Please tell the jury about that.
He was texting this woman that he had had a relationship with on and off, kind of at the beginning of our relationship. So I recognized the name, but the date was right after the wedding. I saw it. He had gone to her house after we got married. Like, upon touching down in Los Angeles, I think it was the next day, he went to this woman's house that he has this sexual relationship with. And
What did you do as a result of seeing that on the iPad?
I freaked out. I immediately, confronted him about it. I was, I didn't care in that moment if he did kill me, which was likely in confronting him at that stage of our lives. I didn't even care anymore. At this moment, he had already ripped my heart out. It's like, I've just been through after having been through what I went through in Australia. Just weeks prior, I see this. It was like, unbelievably painful. Unbelievably painful.
So what did you do?
I'm yelling at him. So yelling. I was calling him all these ugly names. I was screaming at him. Told him to get the fuck out of the house. That's what I said. Excuse my language, but we were screaming at each other. At some point, we were upstairs in penthouse 3, and we kind of get into a how do you describe it? Pushing each other, And I just remember being so mad at him for cheating on me and doing so in this way, like right after the wedding. And then right after my wedding, go to see him, and then Australia happens, and it just felt like everything came crashing down, and I was so hurt. Anyway, I break out of his grasp at some point, and I go into my sister's room. The apartments in the ECB are connecting. At least 3 of them are, and they connect from upstairs only. So you could get from Johnny and I's apartment into the neighboring apartment where Whitney, my sister, was staying at the time. And then you could go from that apartment into penthouse 5. Again, still on the top floor. So I went through Johnny's office, which is how you access the door that gets you into Whitney, the neighboring apartment where Whitney was, my sister. And I went in there and woke her up crying, screaming, saying, "What am I going to do?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Sorry.
All right, I'll sustain.
I don't know, that was Daubert to prove the truth of the matter.
I'll
Asserted
sustain.
In any event. All right.
Sustain the objection.
Okay, so you went to Whitney's. Don't tell the jury what you said to her, but what happened next?
Johnny comes into penthouse 4 and grabs me. I don't know why. I don't know what he was doing, but at one moment I I'm aware that my sister's somewhere nearby, and I thought about that. I just remember thinking about that, and he, I remember getting kind of free from Johnny, and he left, or he walked out of the room.
When you say free from Johnny, what, if any, connection did you have, the physical connection before that?
Well, I mean, I'm, trying to stand up for myself, and Johnny would, at that stage in our relationship, he would just throw me, shove me, hit me in the face. I mean, it was just like, all I could do is just try to fight back, or try to not get more hurt than not doing anything would have certainly left me. I don't really recall specifics. I remember at one point he had his uncasted hand in my hair, and I was looking at the carpet. I don't know what happened immediately after that, but I remember he left. He was out of the room for a while. I don't know how we got into, I think I heard him in P5. Again, this is the neighboring apartment of that. So there's P4 in between, and P5 is the corner. And that apartment was empty, basically. And so I used it, the top bedrooms, the bedrooms on the top floor as my closet. And I had all these clothing racks and shoe racks and stuff like that in there. And then it had another level, the mezzanine, which is it hung over the rest of the bottom floor. And I used that as my office. And the bottom floor is, of course, the living room with just some sparsely decorated, just some big couches and a low table. And I I hear him in penthouse 5. And on the lower level also is another painting studio, like painting area of mine. So I go in there because I hear him, and he's screaming, but I don't know why. I don't know who he's. My understanding was he was screaming at me, but I wasn't in that apartment. I could hear him, and when I heard him, I came into penthouse 5, and I have to go down the stairs, and I went down the stairs to the mezzanine level where my office was, and I could see him and a security guard and Debbie, the nurse, and he was sitting on the sofa when I first walked into the room, and he kind of stood up, was drinking Red Bull and screaming at me, and Debbie came up the stairs because I'm screaming back at him. She came up the stairs, I think. And while she came up, I'm supposed to kind of comfort me. And while I was up on the mezzanine floor, Whitney came down, and he threw the Red Bull can up at me, certainly, but it kind of either hit or narrowly missed Debbie. And I said I called him a pussy, and said something about, I'm screaming at him angrily. I at least called him a fucking pussy. I don't know what else I said, but I was screaming at him because he threw this can at me and everything else that had happened. And when I did that, he bolted up the stairs. And, there's only, he was up the first flight of stairs. Again, I'm on the mezzanine, which is in between 2 flights of stairs. He bolted up the steps, and I don't know how he managed to get his hand in my hair so fast, but he had his hand on the back of my head, my hair, and kind of was yanking me down and hit me in the face with this cast he had. I just remember this brief struggle we had before we kind of break away. Whitney, my sister, all of a sudden put herself in between Johnny and I. She just threw herself like in the line of fire or whatever. She just all of a sudden was there and was trying to get Johnny to stop. Her back was to the staircase, and Johnny swings at her, and I just see my little sister with her back her back to the staircase, and Johnny swings at her, and I don't even wait for any other, I don't hesitate, I don't wait, I just in my head instantly think of Kate Moss and the stairs, and I swung at him. In all of my relationship to date with Johnny, I hadn't landed a blow. And I, for the first time, hit him. Like, actually hit him. Square in the face. He didn't push my sister down the stairs. And all my time of being in that relationship to that point, hadn't even landed one on Johnny. Sure, I had tried to fight back, threw my arms, flailed my arms, hit whenever I could to try to block blows myself, but never landed anything. And Johnny kind of looked stunned and then laughed at me, and then lunged at me again. And before I know it, security stepped in between us and pulled Johnny away. And I went upstairs with my sister, and we locked the door, and I could just hear all this commotion happening in Penthouse 5. I could hear him raging, destroying my things. I could hear it. And at some point I saw it the next day.
Tell the jury what you saw the next day.
All my clothing racks were toppled over, shoe racks toppled over, thrown down the stairs. Desk, everything on my desk wiped off. Just it looked like everything that he could touch, he tried to turn over, destroy, smash, But my clothing racks, these huge, heavy clothing racks full of clothes, there was at least one of them he threw down the stairs. The rest were toppled over.
Amber, I'm going to fast forward to December 15, 2015. Were you and Mr. Depp together at that time?
Yes, we were.
Did you have a fight that night?
December 15th, yes, we did, but I don't recall. I don't recall what started the argument. We had periods leading up to that were really beautiful and really good, and then periods that weren't.
Well, let's talk about the December 15, 2015. What do you recall of your fight that night with Mr. Depp?
I remember him chasing me in the kitchen. I remember throwing something in his direction to slow down his momentum. I remember him screaming. I remember him getting on top of me at some point, toppling me. Mostly at that moment downstairs, he was hitting me in my face. Again, this is another example of when I wish so much I could tell you an exact sequence, but I can't. It's flashes. So I'll tell you what I do remember. I remember at some point trying to flee upstairs. And we had, he got a hold of me and I got free, and I managed to get all the way up the stairs almost. I was on the last flight, and we had some interaction where I think I said something to him on the stairs. It might have been broken up, and I think I said something on the stairs, and I just remember how quickly he shot back up those stairs and grabbed me by the back of my hair, my head, and slammed his hand on my head. And I went down on the stairs, and he overtook me. I remember him so well. I remember his boots and the sound they made. I remember him grabbing my hair, my head, and kind of dragging me up the stairs the rest of the way. He dragged me into the room that those stairs open into. It's like a salon foyer area. And we had this argument that kind of, was a shoving match that I was losing. By the second or third shove, he sent me toppling over this chaise lounge, like a little low-lying sofa seat, and I hit my head on the brick wall. There was an exposed brick wall. I remember I stood up, and I remember Johnny asking me if I wanted to go. And he did that thing where he's like challenging me. He said it in that way, challenging me to stand up and get back up. And when I did, he said, "Oh, you really want to go now, tough guy?" Shoved me back down. "Oh, you really want to go, huh? Oh, you're so tough." I stood back up again. This time he hits me in the face. I stand back up and look him right in the eyes. And it was just a really still moment. I'll never forget it. Really still. I stood up and he said, "You want to go again, tough guy?" And I just looked right at him, just looked right at his face. And he balled up his fists, leaned back, and headbutted me square in the nose. Just right as I stood in front of him. I was a foot from him. Just slammed me right in the nose. Instantly, searing pain. It's one of the few memories I have in this long relationship that I actually remember the physical pain in that moment, just searing. And I remember thinking, you have your hands free. I had time to think. You have your hands free. You could have hit me with your hands. Why did you headbutt me? I told him that night I was going to leave him. I went through his office to go into the other room where I kept all my stuff. We had another struggle. He overtook me. I was trying to hit him off me. I was trying to get him to trying to get his body off of me, and he was just pummeling me. I don't know how else to describe what I was. I went down to the floor. I remember being on top of me, and he's screaming and swinging at me while I was on the floor. He had me by the hair and dragged me the rest of the way from the office into the neighboring room, the neighboring apartment. I remember the door that connected these two rooms had a metal grate, not a grate, but a metal bottom, metal floor that separated it. It's a big, heavy bank door. And I remember he was dragging me, and I removed my hands from my head and kind of tried to grab onto the metal door to prevent him from dragging me into the room. But I couldn't stop him. He dragged me all the way from that carpet. I was trying to get free of his grasp. I was trying to stop him from pulling me. I remember feeling the carpet and the metal. And he drags me up to the bed, throws me down onto the bed. It kind of wrestles me down onto the bed. And he kneels on my back with one leg. And I was trying to fight him off me because I was face down on the bed top. And he wrestled me down, kind of trying to hold me down with his knee on my back. And he's punching me with a closed fist, punching me repeatedly. And I don't remember even feeling the pain. I just remember the sound of Johnny's voice. He got next to my ear and he was screaming over and over and over again. Each time it sounded louder and more desperate. I fucking hate you. I fucking hate you. I fucking hate you. Over and over. Fucking hate you. And then pounding the back of my head, pounding it with his fist. And I don't even remember feeling pain. I just could hear myself scream until I couldn't hear myself anymore. I could just hear him say that he was going to kill me. And that he sounded like an animal in pain when he was saying that he fucking hated me. He sounded like he was almost crying, or something in his voice was different. He sounded different, he sounded like he was in agony. It was high-pitched and loud. And I don't know how many times he just hit me over and over and over again, and I got really still. And it felt in my body like quiet. And I thought, this is how I die. He's going to kill me now, and I'm not. He's going to kill me, and he won't even have realized it. I couldn't breathe. I remember trying to scream, and I couldn't scream. I was suffocating in this pillow top with him holding me down, punching me over and over, and I don't have any memory after that until I woke up.
When you woke up, was there anyone there?
I remember hearing my best friend's voice. I felt like it came, felt like it was like on a speakerphone, like it came from everywhere. I just heard her voice in a weird way. It felt like it was coming from two directions. And I realized that I was sitting on the edge of the bed, on the carpet of the floor against the broken frame of the bed. And there was a low-lying bed with a really thick wooden frame. And it was broken from his boot trying to get a purchase on it while he was...
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
I could feel it.
Overruled. Thank you. Please continue.
I was there for it. And while he was on top of me, I could feel that. I could feel him trying to get balance. I could feel him slipping. I could hear it. I don't know how I got off the bed. I don't know what happened to me. from the time I stopped hearing myself scream. I don't know what happened to me. It's a really weird feeling because next thing I remember is leaning against the broken part of the bed and on the carpet, and my friend saying, "Oh my God, oh my
Objection,
God."
Your Honor. Hearsay.
Sustained.
Okay. Go ahead. And without
And then
hearing what Rocky said.
I eventually, she called the Nurse Erin. She got something out of the freezer for my face. She did a concussion check with Erin on the phone. I thought I probably had a concussion, and certainly thought I had a broken nose. There was blood everywhere, blood all over those pillows. My head was bleeding from the ripped out hair, chunks of hair on the floor all over the place, actually. It was just all over the apartment. He after leaving me, had written on the countertops in Sharpies.
Michelle, I'm going to ask you to bring up Defendant's Exhibit 510. Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes, I do.
And does it accurately depict the scene portrayed?
Yes, that's the next day, I think.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendant's Exhibit 510.
No objection.
All right, 510 in evidence. You can publish it, please.
Thank you. And could you describe to the jury what that is?
It was chunks of my hair that Johnny ripped out while dragging me and punching me.
Thank you. Michelle, could you bring up 513, please? Defendant's 513. Does this picture accurately depict you and the scene portrayed?
I think this is a couple days later, but yeah.
Okay. I'm going to move the admission of Defendant's 513.
No objection.
All right, 513 in evidence.
And could you tell the jury what this is and what it depicts?
This is my face with a busted lip, which it's difficult to see in this picture, but my two black eyes, one is worse than the other. Like I said, maybe a day or two later. And my broken nose.
All right. Thank you. Michelle, can you bring up Defendant's Exhibit 514? Does this accurately portray the scene depicted?
Yes, that's my face sometime after.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendant's 514.
No objection.
514 in evidence. You can publish.
All right. If you could just briefly describe for the jury what this one is.
That's my face. Some time after, and Johnny beat me up.
Thank you. Michelle, if you could bring up Defendant's 515. Does this accurately portray the scene depicted?
Yes.
Going to move the admission of Exhibit 516.
No objection.
515 or 516?
516. I'm sorry if I misspoke.
You said 515 before.
It's 515. 515.
No objection to 515? Okay.
No, Your Honor.
515 in evidence, you can publish.
And what does this depict, Amber? Could you tell the jury?
This is my face sometime after.
All right. Let's look at defendants 516, please. Does this accurately portray the scene depicted? Amber?
Yes, it does. This
I'd
is maybe.
Wait, let me move it first. May I move
Sure.
the admission of defendants exhibit 516,
No objection.
516 in evidence?
published to the jury, please? Okay, Amber, go ahead and explain what it is.
I think this is maybe that night or the next night after Johnny left me on the bed.
Let's go to 517. Does this accurately portray the scene depicted?
Yes, it does.
Move to admit defendants 517, Your Honor.
No objection.
517 in evidence?
Amber, please describe for the jury what this portrays.
That's my face after this incident.
And what's portrayed on your lip?
Well, he busted my lip when he punched me. It's bleeding in this picture. It kept reopening. You know, it's a mouth. The lips move.
Go to 519. Does this accurately portray the scene depicted?
Yes.
Move the
Yes.
admission of 519.
No objection, Your Honor.
519 in evidence?
And tell the jury what this shows.
This is my lip a few days later.
Let's go to defendants 520, please. Does this accurately depict the scene portrayed?
Yes.
Move the admission of defendants 520. Was it 521 or 520? 520.
No objection.
520 in evidence? Published?
Can you please tell the jury what's depicted here?
That's my scalp with a chunk of it missing from when Johnny was dragging me by my hair.
Let's go to defendants 521, please. I don't think that's the same. Let's take that one down. Let's go to 522. Does this accurately portray the scene depicted?
Well, it's a few days later.
Okay. Move the admission of 522, please.
No objection.
522 in evidence?
And what shows there?
My face is healing.
Okay. Let's go to 523. Does this accurately portray the scene depicted?
Yes, I think this is day or so after, maybe longer. I can't tell, but yes, it does.
Move the admission of 523.
No objection.
523 in evidence.
And I'm just going to draw your attention, Amber, to an area up here. What, if any, bruising did you sustain in that area?
Objection leading.
What, if any?
I'll sustain the objection.
Okay.
It's
What, if any, bruising did you sustain?
I'm
Same
sorry.
objection.
I'll sustain the objection.
Did you what injuries did you have?
I had bruising on my temple, my chin, my neck, the back of my head. I had swelling and pieces of, my scalp kind of ripped, torn. They were gross, pussy. But this is of the bruising around my temple from one of the blows, several of the blows, I don't know.
Let's go to 524. Does this accurately portray the scene shown?
Yes.
Okay. Move the admission of 524.
No objection.
524 in evidence.
And what does this show?
It's, I had a pretty, can I touch the screen?
Yes, yes, ma'am, you can.
Yes.
And I had a pretty gross bruise right there in my head, on my temple. It's difficult to see it in this light, but I remember it was pretty ugly.
Now let's go to defendants 509. Does this accurately portray the scene depicted?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I move the admission of defendants 509.
No objection.
All right, 509.
Will you please tell the jury what this is?
That's the bed that Johnny broke. Well, on top of me.
All right, let's go to defendants 511, please. Does this accurately portray the scene depicted?
Yes.
Move the admission of defendants 511.
No objection.
All right, 511 in evidence.
What do you see in this picture, Amber?
Just more destruction from a part of the fight that happened in the bedroom. Not the bedroom that I was just talking about. It was the main bedroom. There had been a part of the fight that happened in there too.
Let's go to defendants 512, please. Does this accurately portray the scene depicted?
Yes, that's downstairs in the main.
Wait, let me move the admission of it. Move the admission of defendants 512, please.
No objection.
512 in evidence.
Okay, now please tell the jury about it.
It's downstairs in the main apartment.
Okay. Let's go to defendants 525. And does this accurately depict the scene portrayed?
Yes.
Move the admission of 525, please.
No objection.
All right, 525 in evidence.
And please tell the jury what this is.
This is Johnny's graffitiing on our kitchen counter that he left on his way out, I suppose.
All right. And I think defendant's 526 is already into evidence. Could you just bring that up?
Yes, 526 is in evidence. Right.
All right. Now, Amber, as of December 15, 2015, what were your plans for Christmas that year?
Well, up to this point, the plan was to have our families join us. We would go with the kids and celebrate Christmas together, as a married couple. And we would all go to Johnny's Island, and he had invited my best friend at the time, Rocky, and her family, meaning her mom and her fiance, and my parents, and my sister, and we were all going to go to this island I've told you about that Johnny has in the Bahamas and spend it together. And that was the plan leading up to this.
And what, if anything, changed as a result of this night of December 15, 2015?
After they saw my face, no one wanted to go to the island anymore with Johnny. They wanted me to leave him.
Did you have to appear, were you scheduled to appear on the James Corden show on December 16?
That's right. I was promoting The Danish Girl, the film I had done earlier in the year in London before going to see Johnny in Australia. So I was promoting that film that had been completed, and they asked me to make an appearance on a night show called The James Corden Show. After this happened, and I did the first concussion check with Aaron on the phone, I got worried that I wouldn't be able to hide the bruising and swelling. But I iced it all night, and the next day checked in the mirror to see if I could get away with it, meaning hiding it, so I could make an appearance. And I gambled and thought maybe I could pull it off. I had my hair and makeup team come, and they worked around it, meaning worked around the lesions on my head with the hairspray, because that stings, and worked around the bruising by covering it with heavier makeup than normal bruise covering makeup. And I remember my lip was still bleeding and swollen, so we did this like really thick, super heavy, matte red lipstick. I remember very well at the time that we had no choice in color, and that was one of my favorite colors to wear, and in this occasion we had no choice because nothing else would hide my busted lip. And I went on the show, did what I always do. I told people I had an accident.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Sustain the
It's not
objection.
offered to prove the truth of the matter, but
Sustain.
because you didn't have an accident. but-
Your Honor.
All right.
I'll sustain the objection.
Okay, please continue. So did you appear on the show?
I appeared on the show.
Okay. And did there come a time that you changed your mind and went to the Bahamas with Mr. Depp for Christmas?
Eventually.
2015.
Eventually I did.
Okay. And you went there with whom?
I went with Johnny's kids. I was obviously, I didn't see Johnny after this because he didn't face the damage he caused in my experience. He was never around for the cleanups. And so he wasn't around for a few days. And I eventually heard from him, and he said he wanted to talk. And then he understood that it couldn't go back, you know, like almost as if he understood that I wouldn't forgive him. Made it easier somehow to talk to him. You know, I didn't feel so bad about myself in that case because, you know, how could I put up with this, right? But with the understanding that we were done, I could, you know, allow for us to have one last conversation, I suppose. But I just, you know, it's like, I was heartbroken by the idea that I would spend my first Christmas as a married couple with his kids and everything on the island. I was heartbroken at the idea of missing that. And, you know, it's the best I can describe it is it's like for every hit, every instance of violence, every time I was choked, every single one of these instances was like a heavy coin put into a piggy bank. And, you know, you think, okay, well, each single one of these is like...
Objection, Your Honor. Non-responsive.
I think it's responsive, Your Honor.
The question was, with whom did you go?
If we could ask the question.
Tell us how you felt and what you were thinking in this process of whether to go to have Christmas with Mr. Depp and his children.
You know, I guess I was trying to explain.
Go ahead.
That, you know, just after you think each one of these is, it's almost like for each one of these things that happens, you lose the will or resolve to leave. You know, it's like every single heavy coin you put in this piggy bank is like an investment into the future you're going to get to, you know, and then before you know it, you're just carrying around this weighted ball. This piggy bank's too heavy, you can't leave. You know, for every single time I went back or allowed him back, after this sort of thing would happen, I lost a piece of myself, a piece of my self-confidence, my trust in myself to leave and move on. You know, I lost the fortifications, I lost myself, and it was somehow easier to stay. I put another one of those coins in the piggy bank of investment in hope and future, and
there is no network. It's a figment of your imagination. It's a website that curates YouTube content, for fuck's sakes.
Decided to believe him that it would never happen again. Right. Clean and sober once again.
It's fuck all.
This time was the last time.
But it is
it's fucking leeching at best. It's fucking leeching.
It couldn't be worse.
I feel you, but it is a traffic funnel, is it not?
Thought maybe it just needed to get this bad to get, you know, like now we can't go back. There's no way this could happen again. So I went to the island after a few days of talking with Johnny, arguing with Johnny, talking with Johnny, negotiating that it was going to be clean and sober. I wasn't going to drink anymore. He wasn't going to use anymore. He'd never lay a hand on me again. He'd rather die than do that, is what he was saying. And I was scared. My friends were scared, but I decided to go. After a few days of having the plane and the kids waiting, not knowing what was going on, they were at Sweetser, the main house, kind of just waiting to go on this Christmas vacation. And eventually, I got in the car with Johnny, and we picked his kids up and left for the island.
So let's go to the island for the Christmas holidays, and what, if any, arguments did you have with Mr. Depp at the island over the Christmas holiday?
Towards the end of the trip, it was, I mean, the trip itself was pretty nice, but towards the end, he started drinking again, started with wine, and we were on the couch in the main house, a cabin. It's like a one-room kind of cabin. And we were sitting on the couch, and Johnny, what I perceived as nodding off, I don't still know what it was, but he was kind of passing out or nodding off or something like that. And I'm sensitive at this point to the clues that I can pick up on to know what pattern of behavior I'm dealing with, because they made a huge difference in my life. So if I knew what he was on and what he was doing, I could react accordingly. So I'm picking up clues. I'm sitting next to him, and he's nodding off, and every single time he kind of like nods off, he dumps this glass of wine on my lap. And I say every single time because it happened like 3 times. First time, whatever. Second time, I'm like, Johnny, are you all right? And I probably say it like a little weighted. And in my head, I'm just wondering what he's on. Does this mean he's on the Roxy's again? Is it nodding off? What's going on? What am I going to deal with? He just had promised that it was clean and sober. We had this horrible thing happen in December. I thought we were moving forward. And the third time this happens, I jump up. I already changed my pants twice. And I jumped up and I shout at Johnny, like, what are you doing? Or, Johnny, you spill on me again, something to that effect. And I get up, get up off the couch, and Johnny's son says,
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Your Honor, not offered to prove the truth of the matter. It explains what's coming.
If you could approach, I just don't know.
Johnny's son says,
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Your Honor, not offered to prove the truth of the matter. It explains what's coming.
If you could approach, I just don't know.
Johnny's son says,
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Your Honor, not offered to prove the truth of the matter. It explains what's coming.
If you could approach, I just don't know.
Amber, please continue. Jack
says, are you okay or can I help? Something to that effect. And I pointedly say to Jack, but really to Johnny, like, thank you, Jack.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Your Honor, not offered to prove the truth
to make a point of the fact that he hadn't offered to help me or even acknowledge that he'd been spilling wine. First, he's drinking wine. Second, he's spilling it all over me. And third, he's spilling it because he's nodding off, is what I said. It says, are you okay or can I help? Kind of say this in a pointed way, something to that effect. And Jack, thanking him pointedly for offering. To Jack, but really to Johnny. Thank you, Jack. Get up, go to the closet to take off the pants that have just been, that he hadn't offered to help me, or even acknowledge that he'd been. Johnny comes into the closet right after me. First, he's drinking wine. Second, he's spilling it all over me. Slams me up against the side. He's nodding off, is what I said. The closet. Says, are you okay or can I help? Kind of say this in a pointed way, something to that effect. And I mean, just with clarity. While holding my neck, he said he'd fucking kill me if I ever spoke to him like that in front of his kids again. If I ever embarrass him, and he just shoved me at embarrassed. If I ever embarrass you, if you ever embarrass me again in front of my kids, I'll fucking kill you. And I don't know. recall who told Jack to leave, or I don't really recall having an awareness of where he was at this point, but I leave the closet, go into the bathroom, which is right next to it, and he comes barreling into the bathroom behind me. Before he does that, I said something snarky to him, "Don't fucking ever talk to me like that again," or "I hate you," or something in response, you know, just something, so that I felt like I wasn't just being a punching bag. And I kind of like get over to the bathroom, but I didn't even have the door shut before he was in the bathroom with me. And I don't know if he used my body to shut the door or if he just shut it. But again, brings me up against the wall. But this time he just grabbed my vagina, like, I was wearing this peach, kind of like netted kind of style swimming suit underneath. That's what I had on from the waist down, and he just grabbed me. Best I can explain it with his shoved his fingers inside me, but through my bathing suit. He didn't like move my bathing suit out of the way, and just kind of held me there and asked me if I was so fucking tough. I thought I was so fucking tough. Said, "Oh, you tough like a man now? You some man now?" Just kind of taunting me while jerking me around. And he kind of seemed to do this thing where he was smiling. It's like teasing me. You know, like, "Oh yeah, you think you're so fucking tough. Now what? Now what?" I don't know what happened after that. I went back into the room, or he went into the room. I don't know who went into the main room first. I just remember his hand landing on the back of my shoulder, neck area. I remember trying to get him off of me. I don't know. I don't know what the next thing that happened was, but I do remember I knew I needed to get away from him. At some point, I ran. I ran out of the back door, ran out onto the patio. At some point before I ran, he swung at me, but I don't even remember how much of an impact it made. But I remember running. I threw something in his direction when I was getting away from him. I ran down the deck, ran out into the kind of like parking lot area, his gravel parking lot area outside of the house. And that's my estimation of when Johnny reached me, grabbed me by the hair, swung me around. I remember he hit my face at least once, but I'm not quite sure in what sequence. Was it before I broke away or after? I don't remember. I just remember the lights of the ATV coming up. The island, two of the people who worked on the island for Johnny, CJ and Tara, they pulled up in the ATV. I remember the headlights. I remember separating from him, or them kind of running up and saying something and separating us. And I didn't see Johnny for the rest of the evening, is my recollection. I just found him the next day, passed out in the cafe that was close to the house.
Is that the end of?
Yeah, this is a good breaking point, yes.
All right. Okay, ladies and Gentlemen, you can just stay there for a moment. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be breaking, again, this is the time that we break for a week, okay? So I won't be seeing you until May 16th. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how the remainder of the case will progress, okay? All right, so we promised to get you the case to you by Memorial Day. So in order to keep that promise, there's going to be a few things I need from you, okay? One thing is starting on May 16th, we're going to start having court at 9 a.m. So we'll be going 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Some days we might have to go to 5:30, so I want to let you know ahead of time so you can plan accordingly, okay? The other thing I need from you is Friday, May 27th, which is the Friday before Memorial Day, is going to be a court day. On that day, we're going to go ahead and have closing arguments, and the case is going to be turned over to you for deliberations on that day, okay? So again, I wanted to let you know ahead of time so you can plan accordingly so we can get this taken care of for you, okay? All right, so those are the announcements I want to make for you and make sure you had time to schedule what you needed to do. Now, I also want to go over, as we always do on Thursdays, our responsibilities, the responsibilities you have as jurors, okay, in this case? All right, so you're not to read anything about this case. You're not to watch anything about this case. You're not to listen to anything about this case. This applies to television, newspapers, magazines, the internet, and any online sites. Further, you're not to read, watch, or listen to anything about this case on any social networking sites such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, etc., or any similar sites. In addition, you must not communicate with anyone about the case, whether in person, over the phone, by email, text, or instant messaging, or by any other electronic or non-electronic means. This includes friends, family, coworkers, acquaintances, and strangers. I also instruct you that you cannot do any research or make any inquiries about this case, whether online or by any other means. What you learn about this case is limited to what you learn in the four walls of this courtroom when proceedings are underway, okay? So please enjoy your week off, get plenty of fresh air and rest, all right? And then I'll see you at 9 a.m. on Monday, May 16th, okay? All right, thank you. And again, ma'am, since you're still in the middle of your testimony, you can't discuss your testimony with anybody to include your attorneys, okay? You can step down, though, and have a seat with your attorneys. I have a few housekeeping matters I want to take care of before we finish. Attorneys, I won't see you tomorrow for Friday depositions because we finished all the depositions. I want to thank all of you for last Friday and staying here until I think it was 9 o'clock at night. But we got them all done, and I really appreciate all your work on that. It does mean a lot. And now you're rewarded because you don't have to see me tomorrow. So, so no more depositions. What I'd also, for planning purposes, though, since we're going to be going 9 to 5, the day is going to be a little different, so we'll start at 9. We'll probably break for our morning break between 10:30 and 10:45. We're going to break for lunch between 12:30 and 1:30, so I want you to plan accordingly for that. Our afternoon break will probably be between 3:15 to 3:30, maybe even a little later to 3:45. We'll see. And then we'll try to break at 5. There may be times when we might go to 5:30, as I told the jury. So I just want to make sure you know that. Since I won't see you tomorrow, I wanted to go ahead and give you your times as of this very minute of what you have used and what you have left, okay? Are you ready? Okay, Mr. Chu's going to try to use it with a highlighter. Let's wait. There we go. There we go. That's right. That's okay. There we go. All right. So plaintiff has used 35 hours and 6 minutes. Defendants have used 36 hours and 31 minutes, which means the plaintiff has 26 hours and 9 minutes left, and the defendant has 24 hours and 44 minutes left, okay? And just to...
Hello. Okay, I got you. Okay, thank you very much. No, they're going that way.
At one point in our conversations, I told him about how...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Please try to continue without what you said, please.
I said something to him, and he got so angry at me, he slapped me across the face. But he did it, like, while crying. It was the weirdest thing. He was crying, saying no woman had ever embarrassed him like that. No woman had ever made him feel like that. I heard that for the rest of the trip, too, just on repeat. And I felt bad. I feel bad. Still feel bad. But, you know, I didn't want to make him feel embarrassed. That's not what I wanted to do. It just was in over my head. I don't know how to detox someone. You know, I don't know how to help them through that. And I shouldn't have been there. You know, I don't...
Why were you there?
Because he asked me to. And I didn't know that that was a phenomenally dumb idea. I don't know why anyone... No, why the doctors and nurses didn't tell me not to. I had no idea what that was going to look like or be like. And it was hell. You know, we're on an island. I'm trying to take care of him, and he was hallucinating and...
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Overruled. Screaming at me for things that I said when I hadn't said anything. I would tell him, Johnny,
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Well, I think in the context, Your Honor, it's not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted.
What's it for?
It's just telling the context of...
I'll sustain the objection. Thank you.
Please continue and just say what he says and what he did and what your observations were.
He was accusing me of having a man in the house with me. We were in a single, you know, in a cabin. It's basically one room with a closet and a bathroom. I mean, there's nowhere to hide, really. I mean, there's a closet and a bathroom. And he, at one point, told me that I was hiding somebody in the house. Another point, he was communicating with someone not in the room. It would yell at me and then yell at someone else. It wasn't there. And I tried to ask for what I should do. I didn't know what to do. It was terrifying and strange. The whole week was...
So after you left Bahamas and finished with the detox there, where did you go from there?
We, meaning Debbie Lloyd, Dr. Kipper, and I and Johnny, we flew back to LA, and he was going back and forth between saying he wasn't going to continue to, he was committed. It was back and forth. Everything was up, down, erratic, like changing every second. And we got to LA, and Debbie and Kipper communicated with me. I won't say what they said, but I decided it would be probably in everyone's best interest if I went away to a hotel. Johnny put me up in this room in this hotel while he finished the process of detox in LA, and I had my friends out with my girlfriends there to support me as per usual.
So Michelle, can you pull up 272, please? And after you both returned to LA, did Mr. Depp communicate with you by text while you were apart, while he was finishing the detox?
Yes, he did.
Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of 272.
Any
defendants
objection?
Yes, Your Honor, to the first message. Excuse me, Your Honor, to the
You
second.
mean the response?
Right.
Okay.
Just present sense of impression, but I'm understanding Your Honor's
Yeah,
rulings on that.
okay.
So
If you want to redact it,
can we
that's fine.
redact that second message? All right, Your Honor,
All right. Any objection to 272 redacted?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, 272 is in evidence, and we will publish.
And Amber, I'm going to show you now what is Defendant's Exhibit 272, and this is on August 20, 2014. It's a text message from Mr. Depp to you. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And just so that we can highlight here, he's calling you, he says, just to let you know that I'm fine, my angel. I miss you, of course, but this was the right thing to do to speed up the process. I love you more than life. Yours, Steve. Do you see that?
I do.
So what, if any, expressions was Mr. Depp giving you at this point that he was angry with you, ever having to help participate with the detox or to be on the island or anything along that line?
Objection, form, compound.
I'll allow it, but just for trying to keep the record clear, 272 has already been entered into evidence without that redactions, and there wasn't any objection. So I would wish if I could have both sides to keep track of their evidence. It's not my job to keep this.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I just got a note to that effect. So
Okay, so 272 is in evidence without, you can clear the redaction and publish it. It's really the party's responsibility to take care of the record, not mine.
my apologies on that one, Your Honor. All right.
All right, and I overruled the objection, so she can answer the question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, can you remind me what the question was?
Yes,
That's fair.
that's fair. I said, what, if anything, did Mr. Depp say about that you were torturing him on the island and he didn't want you there?
Very confusing for me to hear that because even though he was hallucinating and angry at me at various moments when he would have these kind of episodes, I did nothing but try to take care of him. I'm not a nurse. I did my best to support him. And he thanked me. He thanked my mom. He thanked my dad. And told me, of course, I saved his life. That he wouldn't be able to make this change without me. And that this process was horrible and hard on him and us and me. But that he was so thankful that I was there for him.
Okay, we can take this down now, Michelle, thank you. And I'm going to take you up to September, October of 2014. Do you remember filming Magic Mike 2 in that time frame?
Yes, I do.
And what, if any, connections did you have with Mr. Depp in that time frame?
Well, I bargained with him about me doing the role. He told me he would call the actors. It was a mostly male cast. But I bargained with him.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Don't say what you said, just say what he said, okay?
He reluctantly kind of agreed to me working on this movie or taking a job. He was filming a different movie in London at the time. I wasn't going to play a sexualized character. I wore no makeup. or minimal makeup in the movie. No sexy clothing. No kissing scenes. No sex scenes. So I went and did that film in October of 2014 in Georgia, while he finished his movie in London. And then at some point he came out to pick me up in Georgia and was there for my last day or two of filming.
I'm going to ask you to turn to, Michelle, can you bring up 310, please? Defendants 310. Did you have communications with Mr. Depp about auditioning for another role in this time frame?
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to object to the exhibit. That's hearsay.
I'm not sure who's in the text exchange.
It is a text exchange, Your Honor, so, but the green is Mr. Depp. And the one I'm most focused on is on the second page, Your Honor, the top.
The green bubble on the second page?
Yes.
All right, so just that text?
Based on Your Honor's rulings, yes.
Any objection to that text?
No, thank you, Your
Okay,
Honor.
if we can get that redacted.
And while that's being redacted, Amber, let me ask you, what, if anything was Mr. Depp saying to you in this time frame, we're talking November 2014, about you not working anymore or not taking on any more work or auditioning?
Objection, Your Honor. Compound.
They're all the
And
same
leading.
subset.
Overruled, I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Johnny was angry with me for working. I had finished my job and I needed to eventually find another job, meaning a movie, to work on, and he was furious at me for, he found, we call them sides, they're just pieces of an audition, pages, and he found something that had been sent to me to consider auditioning for, and he blew up at me for, yeah, I think what he said to me is that I didn't tell him, that I didn't ask him, and that because he didn't know about that audition that I hadn't done yet, that I had been hiding it, and was furious at me. I ended up not doing that audition, I believe. Well, there was a few, one or two in that time that I did I did audition for, and one or two that I didn't.
You have your seats. All right, cross-examination. You can sit down, ma'am.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Curry, you're not board certified, correct?
No, I'm not.
Not in clinical psychology or in forensic psychology, correct?
No, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist.
But you're not board certified?
No.
Okay. And you also have only been practicing approximately 8 years, is that correct?
That's not correct.
How many years?
I've been licensed for 10 years, and I've been practicing for about 15 years.
Okay, and that includes what you went through with your different trials in Hawaii and everything else that you testified to, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, You went to Mr. Depp's home for dinner and drinks before you were hired as an expert in this case, correct?
That's not quite right. I was interviewed at Mr. Depp's home by his legal team. Dinner was served.
You, in attendance with Mr. Depp was Adam Waldman, correct?
Yes.
Ben Chu, correct?
Yes.
Camille Vasquez?
Yes.
Okay. And the dinner lasted approximately 3 to 4 hours, correct?
Yes.
And it included
The interview.
drinks, correct?
Yes. Dinner and I believe drinks were served.
Okay. And this was before you were hired as an expert, correct?
Yes. This was an interview so that they could make an informed decision as to whether or not to retain me.
And don't you think that's a little odd that you're getting interviewed by Mr. Depp to decide whether you're going to testify adversely against Amber Heard?
I was interviewed by the legal team.
Okay. And Mr. Depp was present. It was his home, correct?
Yes.
And he was serving dinner and drinks.
He was not serving dinner and drinks.
Well, it was at his house at his behest, correct?
Yes, it was at his house.
Okay. And you were contacted by Camille Vasquez, somebody you knew in the community, in February of 2020. Is that correct?
I knew of Ms. Vasquez professionally. We live in the same city, and I work with many attorneys.
Okay. And at that time, you not only knew Johnny Depp, you'd seen a number of his TV and movie roles, and you believed he was a good actor, correct?
Not correct. I did not know Johnny Depp. I
Well,
had
you
seen
knew of
several of
him.
his movies.
You knew who he was?
Yes.
Right. And you believed he was a good actor?
Yes.
Correct? Okay. And then you provided an expert designation in this case before ever seeing Amber or having an opportunity to review any documents or records. Isn't that correct?
I did not provide an expert designation. That's an attorney thing. My opinions are contained in my report.
Let's pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 884, please. This was plaintiff's designation, identification of expert witnesses in this case. And this is dated February 2021. That's a year after you went to dinner at Mr. Depp's house, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it attributes, if you go to page 13, it says you have 3 opinions. The first of those is that Amber Heard, quote, exhibits patterns of behavior that are consistent with co-occurring cluster B personality disorder traits, especially borderline personality disorder. Did I get that right?
I'm reading that here. That is not my opinion.
Okay.
Well,
but
it's a current opinion, but this was not an opinion of mine then. I didn't have any opinions at that time.
It says Dr. Curry will testify, correct?
That's what it says, yes.
Okay. And this is a signed pleading, correct, on behalf of Mr. Depp?
I'm not sure I understand what that means.
You don't understand what a signed pleading is?
No.
Okay. Do you understand that Mr. Depp's counsel prepared this and served it on Ms. Heard's counsel?
I'm not an attorney. I don't understand necessarily all of these procedures.
Okay. Are you aware that Mr. Depp is on an audio recording years earlier taunting Amber Heard that she has a borderline personality disorder?
I was made aware of that in this case, yes.
So you did
actually
that one of the audio
not
tapes
necessarily
you listened to?
taunting, but I do recall hearing that Mr. Depp had used that phrase.
So it's a coincidence that you now think she has those attributes after the attorneys listed it in February 2021 before you'd looked at anything, and Mr. Depp had made that accusation to Ms. Heard years earlier.
My opinions aren't based on coincidence.
It's objection. I'm
Okay.
sorry, Dr.
Okay, sure.
Yes. Compound, I'll sustain the objection.
All right. It's a coincidence then that you came up with symptoms of borderline personality disorder years later after Mr. Depp has been taunting Ms. Heard in an audio tape.
I
calling her.
can't speak to whether or not there's a coincidence. What I can tell you is my opinions are based on the results of my evaluation.
And it's a coincidence that Mr. Depp's counsel attributed that to you, that said that to you in February 2021 before you'd looked at anything, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Now, would you agree that a disproportionate number of women are tagged with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder?
No, that's not quite right.
75%?
The way you phrased it is not quite right.
Tell me what's right.
Okay, so there are more women who have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder than men. It's more prevalent in women.
And trauma can cause borderline personality disorders, can't it?
No.
Never?
Right now, we know that there are people who have borderline personality disorder who have sustained childhood trauma. There are also people who have borderline personality disorder who have had no childhood trauma. So like most personality disorders, and really like most mental health issues in general, there seems to be both a biological component. In this case, with borderline personality disorder, the research tends to support a genetic component and possibly a neurological component. And then there is also possibly an environmental component triggering those genetic markers.
Do you know the percentage of women who are victims of IPV, intimate partner violence, or domestic abuse who are diagnosed with borderline personality disorders?
I can't tell you the percentage off of the top of my head, but I do know that there is a larger, women with borderline personality disorder tend to have a higher prevalence of being involved in intimate partner violence relationships, being the receiver of violence, and being the perpetuators of violence.
Now, you've never been asked to testify or serve as an expert with respect to whether someone has a bipolar disorder. Is that correct?
A bipolar disorder?
Yes.
That's not correct.
Okay. Bear with me.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you recall having your deposition taken in this case?
Yes.
On March 21, 2022?
I believe that was the date, yes.
And were you under oath at that time?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to ask you to turn to page 207. And the question was, have you ever been asked to testify or serve as an expert with respect to whether someone has bipolar disorder? And your answer at that time, will you please read to the jury?
I'm sorry, page 207?
207, line 5.
Ah.
Could you
No.
read? Okay, thank you. Now, when this designation was served in February of 2021, you had not rendered an opinion that, quote, Ms. Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that are consistent with co-occurring cluster B personality disorder traits, especially borderline personality disorder, correct?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part. What was that?
When this designation was served that you have in front of you as Plaintiff's Exhibit 884,
Oh, okay.
you had not rendered an opinion that, quote, Ms. Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that are consistent with co-occurring cluster B personality disorder traits, especially borderline personality disorder, correct?
No, I had not rendered any opinions. My opinions weren't finalized until after my evaluation.
Right. So when this came out, you had not rendered that opinion?
I had not rendered that opinion.
Okay. The second opinion that's listed in the February 2021 is that Ms. Heard repeatedly and characterologically perpetuated severe physical and psychological intimate partner violence, IPV, toward Mr. Depp over the course of their relationship. End of quote. Did I read that correctly?
It says perpetrated, but other than that, yes.
Okay. And so is it correct that that this pleading says in February 2021 that you are going to testify to that?
This document, yes.
Okay.
It says that.
And you have never been asked to testify as to whether anyone has behaviorally or characterologically conducted conduct that suggests they may be an IPV perpetrator, correct? I have to ask that again because I stumbled.
Okay,
I can't do characterologically. That one's just a tough one for me. Okay. You have never been asked to testify as to whether anyone has behavioral or characterological conduct that suggests they may have been an IPV perpetrator, correct?
No, I've never been asked to testify for that.
Okay. And that was not your opinion in February 2021, correct?
No.
And in fact, you do not hold that opinion now, and you were not even asked to provide such an analysis or opinion. Isn't that correct?
No. Or that is correct,
That's
yes.
correct. Okay. And you have never held that opinion, correct?
No, that is correct, yes.
Okay. And your third opinion, if we can go to page 14, was that Ms. Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that suggest her allegations of abuse against Mr. Depp are false, end of quote. Do you see that?
I see that. You said it's my third opinion. That is not my opinion.
All right. But in this pleading, it says that you will testify to that, correct?
Yes, that's what this says.
Okay. And that was not your opinion in February 2021, was it?
No, as I said, I had not formed any opinions at that time. I had just been retained.
And in fact, you have never arrived at this opinion as an expert witness in this case, correct?
In terms, no, the opinions that I've rendered are provided in my report. And they're what I'm testifying to today.
And you have never arrived at this opinion as an expert witness in this case, correct?
I'll sustain.
You have never arrived at the opinion that Ms. Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that suggest her allegations of abuse against Mr. Depp are false, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And in fact, you've said that has never been my opinion, correct?
What I'm saying is that the opinions in here, these are not my opinions. My opinions are provided in my report.
Can you please turn to page 255 of your deposition? And if we can start on 254 to give the context.
I don't have that page, I'm sorry.
254, line 11.
Oh, okay.
And the question is now, the next one is, quote, Ms. Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that suggest her allegations of abuse against Mr. Depp are false, end of quote. Was that your opinion in February 2021? And you answered at that time, no, correct?
That is correct.
And then I asked, have you ever arrived at that opinion in the time that you have served as an expert witness in this case? And your answer was, could you read that to the jury, please?
Yes. So no, it's not the task. I was cut off, or essentially what I said then was, no,
Dr.
that's
Curry,
not the task of Dash. That was never my task to determine. Can I say what that means?
No. And then the question is, so is it fair to say that you have never arrived at an opinion that, quote, Ms. Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that suggest allegations of abuse against Mr. Depp are false, end of quote. And what was your answer?
Well, there was an objection.
All right, I'll read it for you if you're having difficulty.
Okay. No,
Your answer was, under oath, correct. That is not my opinion. That has never been my opinion. Isn't that what
Correct.
you said under
Yes.
oath on March 21st? Okay. And then I wrote, then I'm going to ask you, do you know who wrote this portion of the designation suggesting that these were your opinions in February of 2021? And what was your answer?
I said no.
Now, as of the time of this initial expert designation, you had not reviewed any materials, reached any opinions, correct?
I believe I had just started to review materials. I believe that I indicated that in my deposition. I had not yet rendered any opinions. I hadn't completed my review, and I hadn't conducted an evaluation.
Okay. And in fact, you've never testified as an expert on IPV, intimate partner violence. Isn't that correct?
I believe that is correct, but I may not be remembering all of my cases.
Oh, let's go to page 200.
Okay.
Line 17. My question was, have you ever testified as an expert on IPV? And your answer under oath then at line 22 was what?
Oh, gosh, let me catch up. Line 22. No.
And you've never testified as an expert on emotional distress damages associated with IPV, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you've never been asked to testify with respect to emotional damages associated with domestic violence or abuse, isn't that correct?
Again, I'm reluctant to say that's correct because with 15 years of experience, a lot of my cases have been complex, and that may have been a component, but I don't remember explicitly a case being just about that.
Let's go to page 199, line 20. My question to you was, have you ever been asked to testify with respect to emotional damages associated with domestic violence or abuse? And your answer under oath at that time was?
No.
I've not, right?
Sorry, I haven't found the page in time.
Okay. You said, no, I've not.
But I have not.
Okay. Now, you also have never been asked to testify on whether an individual is being truthful in saying that they are a survivor of IPV. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you have never qualified as an expert to speak to whether a person suffered from IPV, intimate partner violence, or was a victim or survivor of IPV. Is that correct?
That's outside the task of a psychologist to determine whether an event occurred. We assess behavior, we assess mental status, we don't detect crimes.
So you have not been asked to testify to that, correct?
It's not something that occurs, so no, I have not.
And you were not ultimately asked to provide any opinions on that, correct?
No, I was not.
Okay. Now, you did not disclose in any of the designations or your report that you had met with and had dinner and drinks with Mr. Depp, did you?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Yes,
That
you did
confused
not
me.
disclose in any of the designations or in your report that you had dinner and drinks with Mr. Depp, correct?
I did not disclose that I was interviewed by the legal team, no.
I asked a different question. Are you trying to resist that you didn't have dinner with Mr. Depp and drinks?
I'm not trying to resist that, but it's not quite right.
You did have dinner with Mr. Depp, did you not?
I did, with
And
his
you had
legal
drinks
team
with
and
Mr. Depp, did you not?
And what?
You had drinks with Mr. Depp, did you not?
Drinks were served. This was over 2 years ago. I may have had a drink with dinner, yes.
In fact, you thought you had a mule something, right?
Possibly.
Yes, okay. And you didn't disclose that you had met with Mr. Depp, Mr. Waldman, Mr. Chu, and Ms. Vasquez at Mr. Depp's house for 3 to 4 hours and had dinner and drinks, correct?
I did not disclose that. It's not significant to the report.
You don't think that's significant, correct?
I don't.
Okay. But you've never been asked to meet with a client in his counsel before being retained as an expert, either before or after, have you?
No.
And you justified that it was okay in this case because it was a high-profile case.
That's not quite right. I justified it in this case. Actually, I sought consultation about it. First of all, the person who had retained his attorneys was unable to come to my office with his attorneys. And yes, this is a very visible case. It's been going on a very long time. And I understood that there would be a need to interview me and make an informed decision about my qualifications.
Can you look at page 240, please? Line 3 is my question. Would you agree it's highly irregular to meet with the subject in a litigation? And your answer on that occasion was, I would not say it's highly irregular. I would say it's not something that I would typically do. However, I had not yet been retained on the case. This was a large, high-profile case, and I understood that I believed that it was appropriate for a person retaining me with such a high profile to meet me, to be able to vet me, essentially with the attorneys present prior to retaining me on his case. Do you recall that?
Yes.
That's what you said under oath, correct?
Yes.
And then I said, have you ever done that before? And you said, no. Correct?
Correct.
And then I said, have you ever done it since? And you said, no. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, would you agree that if you did not find something that would be in favor of Mr. Depp and negative to Ms. Heard, that you wouldn't be an expert in this case? They're not going to bring you into court if you're going to say that Ms. Heard is right and Mr. Depp is wrong, correct?
So as a forensic psychologist, my obligation is to the court, is to the fact finder. I present science regardless of what that science may be. Now, when I take a case, my retainer agreement is explicit about that, and I discuss that with the attorneys.
I'm asking you a question. I'd like you to try to answer my question. You understand that if you found favorably to Ms. Heard and negatively to Mr. Depp, you wouldn't be here, right? You wouldn't be testifying.
No,
okay, sorry.
Hold on. The objection is speculation.
That's not speculation.
No, I'll sustain the objection if you want to ask.
Okay. If it goes to bias, Your Honor.
I sustain the objection. Next question.
Okay, all right. You were, in fact, so excited about being involved in this case that you told your husband, even though this was a highly confidential matter, that you were going to be conducting the examination of Ms. Heard, didn't you?
That is not accurate.
You not only told your husband, but you told Ms. Heard that you told your husband, correct?
Ms. Bredehoff, that is not accurate.
What is accurate?
You're incorrect. That is not correct.
Is your testimony today under oath that you did not tell your husband that you were going to be conducting the examination of Amber?
That is my testimony.
Okay. Let's go to page 306. So the question that was asked was because you brought muffins, you said, from your husband, right? You gave those to Ms. Heard, correct?
May I clarify what occurred so that we can stop talking about the muffins? What happened was that I was getting ready that morning. I frequently bring muffins to the office. My husband did happen to know that there was going to be a celebrity client coming in because on the mornings that occurs, which often occurs, we have to actually clear the office and move the staff to the other office. So yes, on the one hand, he was aware of that. I was getting ready. I asked him to go to the bakery near our house and pick up the muffins for me because I was running late. He often has to do that because I often do run late. He brought the muffins back to the house. I brought them into the office. Ms. Heard and I enjoyed the muffins together. I think I made a comment to her along the lines like, we can thank my husband. My husband got these for us today, meaning he purchased the muffins. We are now enjoying them because of him.
Did you say on pages 305 and 306 that you frequently have examinations of high-profile clients? You want to just take a quick look and tell us?
What, 305, 306?
Yeah, that's where we're talking about it.
Is there a line you'd like me to look at?
You can start with 15, line 15, 305. Just read through that and tell me whether you said anywhere in there that you have a lot of high-profile examinations. You do this frequently.
Objection to improper impeachment.
I don't agree.
I want you to approach, please.
So why did your husband get the muffins for Amber Heard?
He did not get the muffins for Amber Heard.
He knew you had a high-profile client, and you were preparing for a very long time, and you asked him to pick up the muffins, correct?
I asked him to pick up the muffins for me, yes.
Okay. Now, would you agree that domestic abuse can be verbal?
Absolutely, yes.
Would you agree that domestic abuse can be emotional?
Yes, certainly.
Would you agree that domestic abuse can be psychological?
Yes.
Would you agree that domestic abuse can be physical?
Yes.
Now, you indicated, and I believe you testified in your direct, that it's very important to review the treatment records before forming opinions. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, that's the first thing you would do, correct?
Not necessarily the first, but it's part of the evaluation.
Let's go to page 261. And let's go to 260 because that's where I start the question. The question I asked was, and do you recall whether you'd review any of these by the designation on February 19, 2021? And you said, okay, I can't say for certain. What I can tell you is that knowing my normal procedure, I would have reviewed the treatment records first. Did you testify to that under oath then?
Yes.
Okay. Now, before we start getting into the ones that you testified about, I just want to be really clear about what you actually have as an opinion with respect to the borderline personality disorder and the histrionics. You didn't diagnose, you didn't actually have a DSM-5 diagnosis that Amber Heard suffers from either borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder, correct?
That's not correct.
In fact, your report says Ms. Heard demonstrates psychological symptoms of a combined borderline and histrionic personality disorder. Would you agree?
Yes, I did say that in also what designation was that? I believe January 18th that report was included? Yes.
Okay. And that's what you said at that time, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I said a little bit more than that as well.
You said, and I'll read it, I'll quote it, quote, based on the combined results of my interview with Ms. Heard, behavioral observations, psychometric test data, and review of the available records, Ms. Heard demonstrates psychological symptoms of a combined borderline and histrionic personality disorder, BHPD. That's what you wrote in your report as one of your conclusions, correct?
And that's a DSM-5 diagnosis.
And it did not say that you were diagnosing with a DSM-5 for borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder, did it?
That's what it says in different semantics.
Oh, so what you meant to say...
It did not use the words you just said.
Now, let's talk about the treatment records that you said that you reviewed. But I'm going to start with Rocky Pennington. Your testimony was that out of the blue, Amber hit Rocky Pennington, correct?
I can't remember exactly what I said, but I did reference Ms. Pennington's deposition that Ms. Heard struck Ms. Pennington in the face.
In fact, Ms. Pennington testified that she hit Ms. Heard. And in response to that, she can't recall, but Ms. Heard either pushed or slapped her, correct?
I don't recall.
That's a pretty important distinction, don't you think?
My recollection is that there was some sort of violence both ways in the relationship. Either way, it seemed that both of them might have been unstable. I'm only evaluating Ms. Heard.
So now we have an evaluation of Rocky Pennington?
No, I just said, but that was not relevant to my opinion because I'm only evaluating Ms. Heard.
But you testified to that on direct that that was a factor, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, wouldn't it make a big difference if Amber struck first or just responded back?
Given the dynamic, not necessarily. No, it would not have.
So now you're an expert on Rocky Pennington and her dynamics with Amber Heard. I'll withdraw.
This is sustained.
Okay, so now let's talk about Dr. Cowan. You not only reviewed his treatment records and his text messages and documents, but you also attended his deposition, did you not?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall Dr. Cowan testifying that Amber told him about Depp physically abusing her contemporaneous with the events?
I don't recall specifically his words, but I remember him recalling that she had disclosed abuse in their treatment, yes.
And do you recall Dr. Cowan testifying that he received a text message contemporaneous that Johnny did a number on me tonight. I'm safe in my support tonight, but I need some real help. Do you remember him testifying to that?
I don't remember the testimony, but I do remember seeing that text message as one of the exhibits.
And do you remember Dr. Cowan testifying that on another occasion, Amber sent him a text, Johnny beat me up pretty good last night, end of quote.
Again,
not in this Constance. She can rely on it. She testified.
Overruled.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. I didn't need to argue that hard, I guess. Do you recall that?
Again, I don't recall the testimony, but I do remember that being an exhibit. I've seen it.
Do you recall Dr. Cowan testifying that not only did he believe Amber in her reporting of the abuse by Depp, but that she had no ulterior motive?
I actually don't recall that. I'm not saying that it didn't occur.
Okay. Do you recall Dr. Cowan testifying that he believed the relationship was toxic and he was concerned for Amber's physical well-being?
I do recall him saying that he believed the relationship was toxic.
And you don't recall
I do
Dr.
not.
Cowan saying that he was concerned for Amber's physical well-being?
I don't remember those exact words.
Do you recall Dr. Cowan testifying in that deposition that you were present for, referring to Mr. Depp, quote, his controlling nature, jealousy, and suspiciousness, addiction to drugs and alcohol, and violent and indulgent temper? Do you recall him using those terms to describe Mr. Depp?
I remember thinking that would be an inappropriate impression for a treating provider of a different person to give, but I do recall him making that statement.
Do you recall Dr. Cowan testifying that if he pushed her, she was going to push him back? And I never had the impression that she was the provocateur, but that she was indicating to me she had a hard time, de-escalating these types of situations.
Yes.
Okay. And do you also recall him saying that she didn't say she pushed him, she just said, I got right back up? She told me that he pushed her down and she got right back up.
I remember him saying that Ms. Heard told him that, yes.
And do you recall him testifying you could interpret it that way? I kind of interpret it more, metaphorically, that when somebody comes at her, she goes back at them, in a similar way, whether it's verbally or she protects herself. Do you recall that?
I recalled something along those lines, but it was a 6 or 7 hour deposition, so the specifics are not fresh in my mind.
Do you recall Dr. Cowan specifically testifying that he believed Amber Heard when she reported the physical abuse by Mr. Depp?
I recall him saying that and following it up with a statement that you have to take the patient at their word when you're the therapist.
You recall that?
Yes. Do
you recall him saying that he believed her? That he found her believable?
Yes, that he found her believable.
Okay. Now, you also testified about Amy Banks. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And before we go there, Dr. Cowan has been a clinical psychologist for 40 years, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, he testified to that, didn't he, in the deposition?
I don't recall.
And he also saw Amber Heard for over 2 years, correct?
Yes.
From 2014, approximately August 2014 to 2000 through 2016, correct?
Yes, he did.
For a period of time, would you agree? Okay. And he also testified that he did not diagnose Amber with borderline personality disorder. Do you recall that testimony?
He also testified that he doesn't use diagnoses, but yes, I do recall that.
And do you recall that it was those words were in his notes, but he said he had written that down, but then he discounted it and determined that that was not correct for her?
All right, you want to approach?
All right, now let's jump to Amy Banks. Dr. Banks is a psychiatrist, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, she went to medical school at Georgetown, and she did her psychiatric training at Harvard Medical School, correct?
I believe that's correct. I don't recall 100%.
All right, and she was a psychiatrist in Massachusetts that Amber Heard had reached out to
Yes.
after the Australia incident to try to help her relationship with Mr. Depp, correct? Let me back up. You attended Dr. Banks' deposition as well, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And Dr. Banks testified to that, correct?
I don't remember if she testified to that. I don't have the notes right in front of me or the deposition transcript.
All right. Do you recall Dr. Banks testifying that she understood that Amber was in a relationship with Johnny Depp that had gotten violent and out of control?
I don't recall specifically, no.
Do you recall Amy Banks testifying that they had physical altercations and his drug use had escalated and Amber felt she was at risk?
I don't recall.
Do you recall Amy Banks testifying that Amber was reporting the violence by Mr. Depp and it was not consensual?
I recall Dr. Banks stating that Ms. Heard was reporting violence to her, yes. I do not recall a statement about consent.
Do you recall Dr. Banks testifying that there was discussion about Mr. Depp cutting off his finger, and she said only that it was a middle of one of these very kind of out-of-control escalated fights, and that did make a fairly big impact on me?
I remember something like that.
All right. And do you recall Dr. Banks saying it was a whole other level? As I remember, it told to me he actually cut off a part of his finger during one of these altercations, meaning to me, the way I digested that, if you will, was that things had gotten particularly out of control.
I do not recall that exact statement. I'm not saying it didn't occur, I just can't recall it.
All right. And you recall that Mr. Depp was in sessions with Ms. Heard with Dr. Banks, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
My understanding, however, is that they met with Dr. Banks and then it was primarily Ms. Heard meeting with Dr. Banks for treatment after prescriptions and therapy.
All right. And do you recall Dr. Banks saying that she was not surprised that Amber was seeking a restraining order because of the violence that she knew existed in the relationship?
I do recall that, and it would be impossible to know that violence exists as a treating therapist or as a psychologist. Again, we're not investigators. However, I do recall that she said that because I remember having that thought.
And do you recall Amy, and she's a psychiatrist, right?
Psychiatrist.
Okay. And do you recall Amy Banks saying that it was clear to her that Mr. Depp was the one who initiated the violence?
I don't recall that.
All right. Do you recall that Dr. Banks said that she knew for certain that Mr. Depp was the one who had committed the violence because Ms. Heard reported it in the presence of Mr. Depp and he did not contradict?
I do not recall that.
Okay. And do you recall that Dr. Banks ultimately concluded that it was her belief that Amber was a victim of domestic violence at the hands of Mr. Depp?
Here, you want to approach this?
And what was your answer to that last one? I'm sorry.
I think I can't recall, but I also can't recall that last question.
Do you recall that Dr. Banks concluded that Amber was a victim of domestic violence at the hands of Mr. Depp?
I don't recall that.
Okay. Now, You also reviewed the records of Laurel Anderson, and you reviewed her deposition, is that correct?
Let me refresh my memory for a moment. I reviewed Dr. Anderson's deposition, yes.
Okay, and do you recall that she reported that Amber Heard had reported physical violence by Mr. Depp to her?
I recall that she said that Ms. Heard had reported that, yes.
Okay, and do you recall that she said that it changed over time?
I don't recall that specifically.
Okay, and do you recall Dr. Anderson saying that she had witnessed her face being bruised after the December 15, 2015 incident?
I don't recall that.
You don't recall that, okay. And do you recall that Dr. Anderson said that Amber had reported that he had pulled out her hair, bruised her face, kicked her leg, and hit her in the head?
Yes, Ms. Heard did report that to her according to her testimony.
Okay. And do you recall that Amber Heard said that Mr. Depp was scaring her?
I don't recall that specifically.
Okay. And do you recall that Dr. Anderson said she believed that Amber Heard was a victim of domestic abuse at the hands of Mr. Depp?
I recall, no, I don't recall that statement.
All right, let's go to Bonnie Jacobs. You said that you reviewed the notes from Bonnie Jacobs, correct?
Yes.
And what you testified to was that you discounted these because the first notes from Bonnie Jacobs indicated that she already had all of these symptoms, correct?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. I discounted.
Tell me why you discounted Bonnie Jacobs' notes.
I did not discount Bonnie Jacobs' notes.
You said that Bonnie Jacobs, in her notes, had already determined that these symptoms were present for Amber Heard before the relationship with Mr. Depp, did you not?
What I recall saying was that within Dr. Jacobs' notes, she's documented instances in which Ms. Heard reported to her over the course of therapy that she was experiencing nightmares, recurrent nightmares, in fact, about childhood abuse.
Okay. Now, the very first entry on Bonnie Jacobs' notes, and these are the notes, right? Do you recognize these?
I do, and we
Okay.
received more sort of at the tail end just a couple months ago.
All right, so the first of Bonnie Jacobs' notes is on 10/17/2011. Do you recall that?
I don't recall the exact date. I don't have anything in front of me.
And Amber Heard was already in the relationship with Johnny Depp at this point, was she not?
I believe she was, yes.
Okay. And in Bonnie Jacobs' notes, she documents.
However, go ahead.
She documents multiple occasions that Amber Heard reports to her physical violence upon her by Mr. Depp, does she not?
There are several notes that indicate that Ms. Heard has reported violence by Mr. Depp, yes.
Many, correct?
I wouldn't qualify it as many. I'm not sure what you mean by many.
How many would you say?
I don't know. I don't have the notes in front of me.
Okay, well, what do you recall in deciding to make your opinions in this case?
Well, I'm confused about the dates because I know that Dr. Jacobs treated Ms. Heard even while she was in her prior relationship, leaving her prior relationship with her last wife.
Dr. Curry, I'm not going to ask you to try to bring in extraneous things. I'm asking you what you recall of these
But
notes.
the dates would have been different based on that alone.
Okay.
And I recall that there was quite a bit of information because these were copious notes spanning back in time from her relationship with Tasha.
So Dr. Curry, please answer my question. How many occasions do you recall
I don't know.
Dr. Jacobs documenting Amber reporting physical abuse?
I don't know.
Now, you also said that you listened to audio tapes in this case, correct?
Yes.
Did you hear Mr. Depp admitting to headbutting Ms. Heard?
That is not what I heard.
You didn't hear that?
I heard a conversation about headbutting. I did not hear him, as you said, admit to headbutting Ms. Heard.
Okay, that's your characterization of it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see the videotape of Mr. Depp in the kitchen?
Yes.
Okay. Did Ms. Heard imagine that or create that, or was she responsible for that somehow?
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Okay. What, if any, impact did that have on your opinions watching Mr. Depp in that video?
I'm not sure it was one of many pieces of the exhibits and other collateral data that I considered. I'm not sure what the direct impact was or if that could be measured.
All right. Now, counsel asked you whether you had conducted any type of examination on Mr. Depp, and I believe your answer was no, correct?
No.
You did not review any medical records or psychological records from Mr. Depp either, did you?
I reviewed all of the records that were available.
Do you recall reviewing medical and psychological records on Mr. Depp?
Yes.
Do you recall Dr. Blaustein referring to Mr. Depp having rage?
No, I actually recall him referring to Ms. Heard in that note.
Your testimony is that Dr. Blaustein was referring to Amber Heard as having rage?
I transcribed several of the notes, and I may be missing a time when I said that about Mr. Depp. The handwriting was very difficult to transcribe, but there was one instance in which I recall transcribing him stating that Mr. Depp reported that Ms. Heard had rage.
Dr. Blaustein's deposition was taken, was it not?
I don't recall.
Do you recall, so I take it then you don't recall him testifying that Mr. Depp told him he had rage and demons?
I don't recall. Okay.
Do you recall Dr. Blaustein testifying that Mr. Depp looked at his wife, Amber, like his mother or his sister that he didn't like?
I haven't seen his deposition. I don't recall that.
Okay. Now, did you see and do you know whether Mr. Depp has ever been diagnosed with any personality disorders?
That's not relevant to my task to conduct an evaluation of Ms. Heard. So I do not know that he has had one. It was not in the records that he did.
All right. So one way or the other, you don't know whether Mr. Depp suffers from any personality disorders.
That's not my task.
Okay. Let me go to IPV perpetrators. Would you agree that accusations of infidelity can be considered one of the characteristics of a personality perpetrator of IPV?
It can be a characteristic of a lot of things. It is something that can be weaponized if somebody is trying to or is having rage toward their partner.
Let's go to page 270. Line 3, my question was, are accusations of infidelity considered one of the characteristics of a perpetrator, a personality perpetrator of IPV?
The objection.
The question is vague and ultimately ambiguous.
I don't understand the objection.
I'll overrule the objection.
Okay. And your answer under oath at that time?
Can you remind me of the page? I thought
Page 270, line 3 was where my question was.
Okay.
And your answer's at line 8. You said it can be, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And interrogating your partner about unfounded accusations of infidelity can be abusive. Would you agree?
It can be if they're unfounded, yes.
Okay. And psychological consequences for a victim of IPV can include diminished self-esteem, correct?
Yes.
Depressed mood?
Yes.
Anxiety?
Yes.
Fearfulness?
Certainly.
Diminished self-agency?
Yes.
Feeling powerless?
Yes.
Loss of sleep?
Yes.
And IPV is a traumatic stressor. Would you agree?
It is.
All right. And IPV is capable of resulting in PTSD, is it not?
It is.
Okay. And IPV is capable of resulting in other trauma-based disorders, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Amber's medical examination, she was cooperative, correct?
Her psychological, yes, she was cooperative and polite.
And in the 2 full days of examination, you felt she was polite and answered all your questions, except in one instance where she furrowed her brow when you were asking about friendships in high school, correct?
That's not correct.
All right, let's go to page 275. So we start on 274 with the, was she polite? You said yes. Was she cooperative? Yes. Did she answer your questions? For the most part, yes. This is, now we're on page 275, lines 4 and 5. And then my question was, did she at any time become combative or unfriendly with you or angry? And your answer was, there was one instance in which she appeared annoyed and the posturing forward a bit, more assertive tone, furrowed brow, when I was questioning something, following up on data that had been inconsistent about friendships in high school. Other than that, she was very polite. Is that your answer at that time?
That was my answer at that time, and it's inconsistent with the question you had just asked me.
And would you agree that appearing for this examination with an expert who had been retained by Mr. Depp more than a year earlier might be a little stressful?
Yes.
And in fact, not only had you been retained by Mr. Depp, but what had been communicated by Mr. Depp's team was that you had called Amber Heard a liar and a perpetrator of abuse, correct?
First of all, I'd like to clarify that I was not retained by Mr. Depp. I was retained by Mr. Depp's counsel. And what I can say that, yes, any examinee in a forensic context, you would consider that they're probably stressed.
All right, would you agree that all perpetrators of IPV have anger management issues?
Yes.
And a large portion of IPV perpetrators have substance abuse issues?
It's one of many factors that correlates with intimate partner violence, but there are certainly many people who perpetuate intimate partner violence who do not have substance abuse issues.
All right, let's go to 131, line 17.
$131, you said?
Yes, line 12 is what I have here. And I'm talking about, you said, and just to give context, remember I was asking you what percentage of people you treat that are perpetrators, and you'd said 5%. Do you recall that, just for substance?
I see that here.
Okay, and then I said, of the 5% that are IPV perpetrators that you've treated over the last 8 years, how many of these perpetrators have substance abuse issues? And your answer was?
I see that I answered with a figure of speech, a large portion.
Okay, thank you. And it's common for the perpetrator to essentially gaslight the victim, accuse them of being the perpetrator. Would you agree?
Are you in a different area, or are you asking me a separate question?
I'm asking you a question.
Oh.
And it's common.
Sorry, can you please repeat it?
Yes. And it's common for the perpetrator to essentially gaslight the victim, accuse them of being the perpetrator. Would you agree? That's exactly how it was asked in the deposition. So
I understand it is a compound question. I'll sustain the objection.
And it's common for the perpetrator to essentially gaslight. I don't think that's, Your Honor, I think it's just one question. Let me try it. To gaslight the victim, isn't it?
That's a characteristic of psychological abuse, yes.
Okay, and it's common then for them to accuse them of being the perpetrator, the victim.
That's a characteristic of abuse from women perpetrated against men. It's actually very, very common. About 90% of male victims of IPV have reported that a female partner who abuses them makes threats to report their partner as an abuser. It's less common for men to make that statement to female partners just because there's less potential consequence.
Isn't it true, though, that some form of gaslighting is often present in these personality-based IPV scenarios?
Yes.
Okay. And it's distressing for the victim to be accused, is it not?
Absolutely.
It causes them a lot of fear,
Certainly.
and it causes them a lot of distress.
Absolutely, yes.
And in fact, they feel falsely accused, correct?
Yes.
And they feel paranoid,
Yes.
and they feel frightened,
Yes.
afraid that everyone's going to believe the perpetrator, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, they're afraid they're going to lose their security, correct?
Can you clarify what you mean by security?
I'll ask the next one. And they're afraid they're going to lose their reputation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's talk about the testing for a moment. You talked about the MMPI-2, but that's not the most recent MMPI, is it?
No, it's the most researched.
Okay. Now, you need to have an elevated, on the MMPI, there was only one section that had elevated scores, correct?
No, that's not correct.
It was the K section, correct?
That's not correct.
Okay. And was there any elevated score over 65 on the MMPI?
I would need to take a look at it. If you know, I provided a 25-page interpretation outline. If you're able to pull that up, I'd be happy to go over any of the individual scores for you.
Can you recall any clinical scales for the MMPI-2 for Amber Heard that were above 65 as you sit there today?
Again, there are multiple scales on this test, 25 pages worth listed. So if you can pull it up, then I can review and give you a confident answer.
What can you recall as you sit there?
I'm hesitant to do that because I don't want to make an error by ignoring hundreds of scale scores.
And would you agree that you can't make a pathological determination or diagnosis if the scales are not elevated on the MMPI-2?
I would not agree with that.
Okay. Now, one of the answers that Amber gave is that it's hard for her to feel safe, correct?
What are you talking about the MMPI-2?
Yes.
Again, I don't recall. There are 567 items on that. I would need to see her results.
Well, it's a common trauma symptom, isn't it, to not feel safe?
Sure.
And safety concerns are common among women who have been victimized, correct?
Women and men, yes.
Okay, and common especially for sexually victimized people. Would you agree?
Any type of victimization, yes.
Okay, and hard to trust. That's a common after effect of interpersonal violence-related trauma, correct?
Sure.
And memory difficulties. Amber said she felt she had holes. Do you recall that?
I do. And her account was different than typical memory difficulties with trauma.
It is common for individuals who have experienced trauma.
And it's actually not common. No, it's a symptom, but it's the least common.
In fact, a DSM-5 diagnosis for PTSD includes a, quote, inability to remember an important aspect of the traumatic event, end of quote. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. And memory difficulties are a symptom of PTSD, correct?
Certain types of memory difficulties, yes.
Okay. Now, do you recall when Amber says the first incident of abuse took place?
I believe it was, the first incident in which yes. So she stated that it was early on in their relationship.
Okay. Do you recall it involving?
I don't recall the exact date off the top of my head.
Do you recall it being a tattoo, something related to a tattoo?
I do.
Okay. Now, if someone had been subjected to a 4-year relationship characterized by repeated IPV, they can have symptoms, correct?
Yes.
Intense anxiety?
Yes, certainly.
Depressed or irritable states?
Actually, it's not so much states. When you're looking at a real trauma reaction, it's pretty persistent. It's less of these transient states.
Intimate problems?
Yes.
Relationship difficulties?
Yes.
And these are symptoms you're also attributing to the personality disorder, correct?
Yes, there are some key differences.
Okay. Now, let's talk for a moment specifically about a couple of the profiles on the MMPI. This is not an exaggerated profile for her, is it?
No, actually, that was something unique. When she completed objective broadband measures, where the questions, you don't know what the questions are getting at, they seem completely random, she raised scores that indicated that she was trying to minimize any mental issues and appear completely free of pathology. When she took tests that asked questions that were specific to trauma, that's when you'd see these extreme exaggerations.
All right, let's go to page 337. My question on line 7, this is not an exaggerated profile, is it, for her? And your answer under oath at that time was no, it is not an exaggerated profile. Do you see that?
Yes, we're
That's what
talking
you
about the
testified-
MMPI here.
You
Yes.
testified under oath at that time, correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Now, the profile is also not consistent with malingering, correct?
The MMPI-2 profile, it's specific to how she approached this test, and you're correct. For this test, it was a defensive profile, not an exaggerated profile.
So my question on line 10 was, this is not a profile consistent with malingering, correct? And your answer under oath at that time was correct. On this test, it is not consistent with malingering, period, right?
Yes.
That was your full answer. Okay. Now, is it your testimony under oath today that you have not been asked to testify concerning Ms. Heard's behavior in the context of her relationship with Mr. Depp, including any abuse?
That's correct.
Okay. And you have not made any determinations, including any of opinions that Ms. Heard abused Mr. Depp or Mr. Depp abused Ms. Heard, correct?
Correct. That's outside of the scope of psychology.
Okay. And you cannot testify whether Amber Heard suffered any emotional distress as a result of any of the defamatory comments that she has alleged Mr. Waldman made through Mr. Depp made through Mr. Waldman, correct?
What I can testify is that there was no indication of a decline in psychological functioning showing any injury since she's been with Mr. Depp.
You cannot testify one way or the other on that, correct? Your Honor, may we approach?
Okay.
Dr. Curry.
Yes.
In your report, nowhere in your report did you provide any opinion of whether Ms. Heard suffered emotional distress as a result of the defamatory statements. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, redirect.
Dr. Kerr, you were just asked a question about malingering.
Yes.
And made reference to the MMPI-2. Is there another test that
Dr.
you
Curry.
did to make a
Yes.
determination
In
with
your
respect to
report.
malingering?
Yes. So I also, well, malingering is a term
Any
that
opinion of
most
whether Ms.
psychologists, we
Heard
try to be careful of
suffered
it
emotional
because it
distress as a
indicates an
result of the
intent
defamatory
for secondary gain.
No, bro.
I prefer fame.
I cannot,
Product
by
failure
any
because
chance,
it
I
indicates
can't,
that somebody is
I cannot
intentionally
contact the fucking
exaggerating.
police, bro.
I don't know necessarily.
Bro, that
why.
should make me look bad, bro.
So I think that's a more accurate term in general.
Dr. Kerr, you were just asked a
on the
question
MMPI-2,
about
yes, there was no
malingering.
exaggerated profile.
And made
I also
reference
gave
to
her
the
the CAPS 5. I don't
MMPI-2.
know if you'll remember,
Is there
but
another
that is
test that you
the
did to make
clinician-administered
determination
PTSD
of
scale.
malingering?
Yes, consistent
So
with the
I
DSM-5.
also-
And on
malingering is a
that,
term
there were
opinion.
signs of gross exaggeration.
Try to be careful.
I
for the most
also
indicates
looked at the test results that were provided by Dr. Hughes, and on an objective test of trauma, there is a scale specific to intentional exaggeration on that test, and Ms.
He's
Hurd
serious,
was in the
okay.
98th profile, 98th percentile, meaning that she is
All right, Trina, what's the
she
location?
had
Here we
engaged
go.
in extreme levels of exaggeration.
Thank you. You were asked about intimacy problems, relationship difficulties associated.
You mean since
with
you saved
IPV.
Andy?
You-
Maybe Justin Davis, I don't know.
There's some key differences.
Of
What are those?
Saving is
what you see
saving
when
might
we're
be a
talking
little
about
exaggerated,
personality
but
disorders is there is a very consistent pattern of the
Kidnapped.
aggression, the violence, the irritability.
Where's the lighter?
First of all,
Did Jessica
it's
take
escalated.
it?
But second of all, it occurs when there is either for the borderline component, a threat of abandonment, a perceived slight, feeling like
The
person is
fiancé
about
woman?
to leave you, about to walk away to get some space from an
yeah, the
argument.
fiance woman, I'm
It's
not,
all.
I'm not
It
that
also
sure about
occurs
what's going on
to
there,
a
honestly.
more mild extent, but when there's a loss of attention and
Are you
a need to
meditating?
manipulate to try to get that attention back. But it's not when somebody has PTSD.
Meditative
that
position.
irritability is
Don't
sort
lie
of
to
at
me,
a
bro.
low, constant level.
You are meditating.
Or it's completely random. For instance, you might have a Vietnam vet who went straight to bars for a period to get into
Okay.
fights with the hope
Okay,
that
so
he would kill
meditation,
somebody
good.
and just self-destruct. So
I'm
it's
down
a
with that.
very different type of presentation. IPV, it might be more irritability, but that's actually less of a symptom for female IPV
Friggin'
victims.
raw.
Usually what you'll see is
Where's the lighter?
somatic symptoms, the depression,
Bitches.
a lot of fearfulness and anxiety, but typically more complaints about somatic symptoms.
You testified that
On it.
some of the professionals involved in this case had to take their patient at her word. What
I'm
did you
slowing
mean by
down
that?
on nicotine though, guys.
So
don't do it.
when
Don't
you're
smoke.
providing therapy, you're in a
Thankfully,
very
Lewis
different
is not
role
around anymore,
than
so I don't got
an
no fucking
examiner.
vapes too
When you're
much.
the forensic examiner, you're just
So
really
I'm off the
looking at
nicotine.
data to make
I
a
found a
decision.
cigarette
When you're a
around here, so I'm gonna
therapist, you're
smoke
an
it. After
advocate
that,
for
I
your
think
client's well-being.
I'm out
And
of
in
the
fact,
temptation.
It's considered extremely unethical for a
Don't.
treating provider to ever provide opinion testimony like I'm providing, because it's so well known in our field that you're going to have an automatic bias for your client. It's almost a sense of protection, advocacy, wanting their best, which is why
intolerance
we
to nicotine?
also know that it's very inappropriate
Yeah, it does.
to convey any sort of opinion about whether a crime occurred, whether abuse occurred. We can certainly believe our clients, we can support them in their therapy and take them at their word, but when giving opinions and consultations, we have to be very, very
so.
cautious and really only provide the facts. We would state things in terms of, my client did report this, I saw this, here was our treatment plan, here was the diagnosis. It's we're taught, we're trained to stay away from making any sort of opinions, understanding that most of the time, and most of Ms. Hurd's providers were just treating Ms. Hurd. They had never so much as done an initial interview with Mr. Depp and gotten his whole life story or
Raising the
symptoms
cigarettes
or
on the
taken
floor.
his
No,
side
this
of any of
cigarette,
it.
they got
and
it
they're
from
going to
the
be
zone.
advocating, and the treatment relationship is about helping the client achieve well-being, not making formal psychological or psychiatric opinions.
So you're asked a question about a series
Yeah,
of
I
doctors.
guess so. It's kind of weird.
Dr. Cohen, treating physician?
Yes, he was a psychologist.
Yeah. Dr. Banks, treating physician?
Dr. Banks, yes, treating psychiatrist.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes, treating psychologist.
Every one of them had to take Amber Heard at his word, right?
Yes.
Didn't know Cabby smoked. Not, I mean, I vape.
Thank you. No further questions.
Listen, here's the thing. I don't like smoking.
Yes.
I'm pretty good at not
Is this
doing
gonna be
it.
subject to recall?
You will very rarely see me spend my own money on nicotine products.
All right.
Since you're subject to
vapes,
recall, Dr. Curry,
cigarettes.
please do not,
once in a while,
discuss your
I'll buy a
testimony,
vape.
and please do not
Very
watch,
once in a while, if I'm like celebrating or
Oh,
something like that. Okay,
All right,
I'll
thank you.
buy a
You
little
can stay there
vape.
for a moment. Okay. All right, ladies,
But
we're
when
gonna
I have
take our
people
afternoon
around that
recess for
smoke
15
cigarettes or
minutes.
they
We'll
have
do the outside
vapes
research and we'll talk to you.
and they offer me, hey, you want to take a hit? Or even if they have a vape, I'll even ask, you know, hey, can I, you know, I do it. I know. It's not that I even ask. I am pretty bad at it, especially with vapes. But I'm pretty good at staying out of it if I'm not around people that, you know, consume it. I don't smoke or vape, I leech. Pretty much, yes. I just leech nicotine. But if I'm by myself, you won't see me now. I just obviously I think it's stupid spending your own money on something that's like just like nicotine.
Okay. We'll come back
It's
at
not that
3:20
great,
before you
honestly.
back out when you back to your exhibits,
And
okay?
it's
All right,
super
thank
bad for your health, so.
The name Vegamore comes from vegan and amor, it's love. Love for life, love for yourself, the environment. I'm Dan Hodgson, I'm the CEO and founder of Vegamore. One of the reasons I started Vegamore was because I was trying to prove a point. I'm trying to prove that you could do it differently. You could create products that didn't harm people, didn't harm the environment, they were actually good for you. When I started doing my research, I realized that 80% of women in their lifetimes will experience
Cap.
Yeah, what you need?
Can you do me a favor and call Lewis?
Lewis? Lewis is flying out internationally today.
When is he coming back?
In like a week or two.
I left my jeans in his car.
Where do you leave?
My jeans.
I found some jeans that belong to you, I think.
They look like it, yeah. Were they right there? They have a white, they have a weird chain on them.
They're right there.
Are they those? No, it's another pair of jeans.
That
they're an older pair.
that had a vape in it.
This one?
Yeah.
Where's the vape?
In the pocket.
There's another pair of jeans that I lost many months ago that I left at someone's house.
Classic JJ, white tee, jeans.
Pretty cool to have. It doesn't really matter. Just wanted to.
We can get it back, but probably not today, though. I'll tell you.
Okay.
We'll have to wait till this guy gets back.
As far as he's
Plus, he's
aware
kind of
of it.
pissed at me now.
He's just like that sometimes, I think.
What?
He's just like that sometimes.
Yeah, I guess he's like that sometimes. Hey, JJ.
Good morning.
Pissed why? I don't know. He was talking all sorts of shit about the vaping thing yesterday. But then he came and didn't say nothing to me, so. Why didn't he buy his own vape? I'm like, sorry, Louis. I'm sorry. I told you. I've explained it to you why I don't do it.
He's slightly aggravated.
And I'll try not to ask. I'll try not to ask him for the vape anymore. Okay, I'll try. He can just say no. Also, I won't be mad. I won't stop being his friend if he doesn't let me fucking leech of his vape. I'm cool with it.
Trina says if you want her to get anything, because she's going to like something.
Sure, get tacos, burritos, margaritas, what else? Piñata. The whole jammy, Trina. Bring us the whole Cinco de Mayo experience. Could you? Nah, I'm good. Cap, you're working out, it's paying off. Thank you. It's not only the workout, it's also the diet.
Satanic Feminist, tell me about the protest.
6. Do you like to head?
You guys are going to the soup kitchen.
Yeah, we're gonna try to get there early so we can get a couple boxes.
Nice.
Since we missed the operation yesterday.
You guys should. Because it's like, what, a 20-minute walk?
It's like 27 minutes.
27-minute walk. Unless you guys go on scooters or something, then it's probably like, what, like a 8-minute scooter ride. What diet do I believe is the best? I have no fucking idea. Don't ask me about diet and nutrition at all. I just started working out and fucking drinking protein shakes after my workouts. That's all I do. I'm just trying to eat proteins. That's about it. Captain Best Diet, whatever food is cheaper, usually McDonald's, yeah. He bought 3 vapes hoping he could just have one, but he got to stake him. I respect that, honestly. That was more Gucci's than anybody else. She got a drunken manic and she was just taking, hogging.
She killed my whole vape.
I know. I have a little more respect for Lewis's vapes than that, okay? So if he wants to, like, find... I understand he would be mad at me, too. But personally, my opinion, Gucci's is the fucking worst when it comes to fucking taking vapes and hogging them and not giving them back. And like claiming them, but that's just my opinion. I'd say I'm much better either though. Let's grow sharing vapes like that. Yeah, you're right, maybe.
You drinking this water?
Am I drinking this water? No, you can have this water.
Are you okay if I dump it and put my beer in here? Or are you gonna finish it?
I'll just drink it then. Hydrate. It's good to have water in your system.
Yes. Lewis said Captain stole vape. Wait, he found all his vapes, right?
He was missing one.
Oh shit.
He thought I stole it, I think.
That would pop up.
Pillagine was the last one who had that one.
Oh, we found that one.
Good.
Don't suspect a thing.
Steel Reserve hype.
Good.
Well, while you guys go there, I guess I'll try and repair my guitar.
Yeah. Trina said she's on her way.
Oh yeah, she did.
Making some beer.
Cold. It's just, I cannot imagine someone being able to get up.
I poured it wrong. I'm supposed to do it at an angle. My hair always wasn't.
Medicine hope.
Shit is tight, bro.
Do you really?
Yeah. Thank you.
That was fun.
Alright. Good luck with the free food.
Grumpy.
That's gonna be, that's
Good morning. Good morning. Do you want these pants?
Probably sell them.
Sell them?
Yeah, probably
Okay.
sell them.
Sell them?
Market price.
That's not what you do with people's gifts. Either you want them or you don't. You don't just take them and sell them and keep the money. But I guess that's fine. Yeah, you can do that. I'll just leave them right here.
Merchandise.
So 104.
Put it back into the RV.
Put it back into the game, exactly. Sell them. I like the idea, actually. It's good. I mean, I don't want them. Honestly, those pants, just have them to give to somebody at a certain point.
That's enough. Let's do it. Got my charges and shit.
Clothing.
Yeah, maybe we can go to Alvera Street and lay out those clothes on the ground. Probably sell some stuff. There's probably people.
Sounds good.
They're just functioning day long. Whenever we get our food and everything, just freaking function on Alvera Street. Sell all those shirts, make a couple $100.
You had one of your eggs yesterday, huh?
Yeah. That's true.
Good. I like how you leave it there.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. Cracking skulls, spilling blood. Raw, yeah. JJ likes eating raw shit. I mean, you can eat raw eggs. I guess bodybuilders do it all the time. Raw beef, raw milk. The raw god.
Just grateful for whatever my body may utilize as sustenance. You know, just like freaking whatever may. Like, dude, whatever freaking meats in the ass.
All right, yeah, get the fuck out. Go.
Share this.
Yeah, we get it.
Food's freaking good, dude. I'm hungry now.
Got some chicken. Yeah, I want some chicken. Sonic got some chicken.
You want to go to the food bank? Yes.
Alright, see you guys in a bit. Swear to God, all you do is eat chicken meat. I might snag a piece of Sonic's right now. I mean, they're gonna get free food, so I eat chicken every day. Fuck, I should. That's what bodybuilders do. They just eat chicken and salmon. They just eat chicken and salmon. That's about it. All right, guys, let's try and do this. This poor little axe. This is a nice guitar, by the way. This is what I was playing before I got my other Ovation. I think it's a 1990 something, 95, something like that, I think. And unfortunately, you know, shit don't last long in this RV. Well, not in the RV. It was all me, you know. It dropped, as you guys can see. See this? Well, this is some tissue actually, but you guys can see it's not very thick, but It's got some damage on the neck. I fixed it once and then it cracked again because I got mad at Gucci's and I just like kind of like threw the guitar against the fucking wall.